And Alex, we are on the very first podcast of higher density living.
Numero uno.
This is the very first one. I'm so excited. Why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
First deposit in the bank. Hi, everyone. I am the co-founder of Tartle, an online digital exchange that allows you to sell your digital identity to people willing to buy it across the internet. And I am also a large study of consciousness. It's one of my favorite hobbies, and I am here to share the wave with everybody on our higher density living.
So before I get into me a little bit, because I want everybody to kind of know who we are, why don't you tell a little bit about your spiritual journey?
No, that's fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
So, to get this going, I want to start that we have a recurring theme here on higher density living. And that theme is that all is one. It's that connectedness. There's actually no difference between you and me and that piece of wood, whatever it might be around me in this universe. There is a thread, a common thread that connects us all. And we're going to continually replay that theme and bring you back for how all these scientific study, stories, books, interviews, food, for instance, and how we live our lives, we apply that theme so that we can elevate ourselves and bring ourselves up to that next step of higher density.
I love that. And so, like you said, not only do you have a tech company, but you're also have been a student.
Yes.
Of this conscious living or higher density living. What brought you? I know you were raised back east and all that. When did you really start paying attention to that?
No, thank you. I appreciate it. So, Jason, the first thing that we moved into here was I was immensely stuck on the physicality of things. Physics was always a massive interest of mine. Science in general, but physics more so than anything else, and even more so astronomy, right? Now, quantum mechanics came out in the late 40s, and I became an earlier read and study on it when I was in my earlier years of high school, and I'm like, this is something that I'm really taking to. And I wanted to find an understanding with how my perspective, the things I felt of this world, tied into what I was being told in these textbooks, or what I read, or a documentary that I might have watched, or something that a scientist might have brought up, right? Because it'd be awfully coincidental that people are coming to these common themes,
right?
But we're trying to find what that understanding is. That's what it is. We're trying to apply something physical to understand the world we perceive around us. So my whole journey actually started with the IRS.
Don't we all?
Yeah, doesn't it all? I guess it's death and taxes. That's the closest thing we're going to get to higher density living. So when I was looking at the IRS, right, and this kind of spun me off, right, I already had a big grasp on physics. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had come to find out that the IRS was a privately formed company back in the early 1900s. And I was curious as to how that applied to my life and the function of it, and who kind of ran it, why it was incorporated, things of that nature. And this kind of snaked me down a rabbit hole where I found that it was beyond the connection of just the physical realm of money, but how money emotionally controlled people's lives. And then I started looking into the emotional aspect of things, and how do I look at that emotion and then reflect on myself and be like, okay, if money is such a tool, right, I want to make sure that it's used for good, but I see that it's used in a moderately oppressive tone.
Right.
So how do I flip that tone? How do I understand that? How do I apply my love of physics to understand why we want and need and feel this emotion, and then how, beyond the money itself, why it can do such a physical strain on us when it's something non-physical that we continue to think about, right? Just the digits in a bank account, but it can be so effective on us.
Yeah, or pieces of paper with dead presidents.
Yeah, no, the piece of paper with dead presidents, right? More dead stuff. So on my journey, I'm doing a lot of introspective looking. I'm looking at myself. What is my self-awareness? How much do I want to let this affect me, right? So as I begin to study, it moves out and it says, people have all these weird things where, like, let's talk about aliens or reptiles are controlling the IRS and the government and the central banks, yada, yada, yada. And that they have an overlying theme that if they can suck the energy, right, use this energy, this negative energy that they have harboring,
right,
that it helps them grow, right? It allows them to feed off of that energy. And so the thoughts start coming to mind. I'm like, okay, you're telling me that there's an energy involved that people feed off of, something non-physical that causes this entity to survive. Whether it be real or not, the story or true, the myth, I don't care what it is, or legend. It's the concept that stuck with me that something non-physical can feed my body internally. So I start looking and reading on my spiritual journey, and I'm like, okay, what books are going to come up that move from the physics to an understanding of that connectedness, right? Where something I can't see has such an effect on me or how I emotionally feel. So the first part of physics I looked at was quantum entanglement, right? And that would be if I have a particle, an atom somewhere in space, and it comes and it joins with another particle, okay? Assume one's red and one's green. Now I have two particles that are both red and green. Now say I send this particle millions of light years away. Another boy comes up and he's blue. So the blue guy comes and meets up with my first particle that was green, but turned red and green. Now I have red, blue, and green, so I have three colors. The moment that blue touches this particle, it immediately changes the particle millions of light years away, irrespective of space and time. Something's up here.
So that right there alone, we're going against physics.
We're going against physics, right?
Right.
And I think physics is a funny word, because when they talk about physics, you're saying physical. They don't call it non-physics.
Right.
You know what I mean? They don't call it
right.
inanimate physics. It's just physics altogether, which frankly, the word's like kind of limiting, right? But we found through our studies and in my own spiritual journey that, okay, I can connect with an energy that might be somewhere else, right? So I thought to myself, why not try it? If I looked at all the practitioners over time, what is the one thing they always look to do? They said, you need to practice meditation. Well, there must be something here. There must be some sort of unspoken truth, because there's a lot of extremely learned yogis, for instance,
right,
that have never touched a book in their life, but they can conceptually understand, beyond even what I know, the world around them, and even the world that they don't see, right? And we've talked about these scriptures for thousands and thousands of years in this practice of internal reflection and meditation. So I'm like, rather than me bash it, let me apply this theory, right? This idea of tapping into an energy or a flow or an ether that they would like to call, and see if I can apply that to my life, right? So I go from the IRS and its entanglement, how money makes me feel, and then I apply physics, and I see that physics can work irrespective of space and time, and I'm nothing but a big mishmash of particles. So why can I not work irrespective of that space and time? Why can I not enhance myself? Why can I not connect with other particles that I might not be able to see? So where does my spiritual journey start? I sit down, I feel like a total idiot. You want to know why? The first time you go to sit down, have you ever tried meditating?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I've tried apps, Headspace, all that.
You've tried it all, right?
Right.
Now, I remember this like vivid as yesterday. I sat down and I'm like, okay, they say, quiet your mind, do the breathing, and just move through it. Instead of breathing, let yourself be breathed. Okay? So I'm sitting there, I'm like, I feel so dumb. I'm like, but the thing is, I'm like, what am I talking about? Why do I feel dumb? There's no one in the room. So now I'm going through a session of self-judgment. And then I begin to question, I'm like, why am I judging myself for doing a practice like this? What is the necessity of it? And then now I begin to reflect. Wait a minute, I'm moving into the meditative state. I'm questioning the thoughts that come through. And then I start to let the thoughts flow. And then I let them go because I realize they're not necessary, right? And now you're meditating.
Yes, I think I posted a video this morning, something that, the ego always wants to put labels on things.
That's correct.
So when we have these thought process, we're automatically labeling them and self-judging.
Yes.
So I think that's where. So you go to this state. Obviously, you're reading book after book after book.
That's correct.
Trying to figure it out. And I know you're a lot younger than I am. Yeah. So you're at that level. Now you're looking at it. You're questioning physics. You're wondering, there's merits to it. But what are you looking at, the last 5 years? What are you seeing right now that is causing you to question? Not necessarily the laws that are out there, but like as far as you personally on your spiritual journey.
Okay, that's cool. So I had worked with a metaphor that I kind of came up with. So, people talk about what goes around comes around. Let's think about this in a physical probabilistic manner. If I I wake up and I'm just having a totally rotten day, all right? I'm in a bad mood. I go and I'm like, Jason, can we interact? Can we talk? there's an aura, there's an energy to that mood. But what I'm doing is I'm sharing this negative tone with you. So now, if I do something that is either immoral or has a negative energy to it, it's gone from me and it's transferred to you. I've now doubled that energy. Now, this isn't going to make you feel better. Most of the time, it makes someone feel worse after you're talking to someone that's so incredibly depressing that you're
right.
Holy shit, am I depressed? You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's those, they even call them like energy vampires.
Energy vampires, right? So now let's step it out. I've come and talked to you. You go and talk to someone else. I've now bifurcated that negative energy. There's just over 7 billion people on the planet, and there's only so many times you can square the energy of something before it cycles back to you. Does it not?
Yes.
It might take some length of time,
right?
But you've essentially transferred that energy step by step by step by step, and it's come around the globe, and now it's bit you back in the ass. Right?
That makes sense. I think we can see governments that way.
We can see governments that way, right? Now, if we're going to expand upon that, that's the physical nature, right? And I'm transferring this negative emotion or this thought form, whatever it might be. Now let's consider it being positive, right? You know, people talk about karma. So now there's an old saying in the Bhagavad Gita and other older Egyptian-like texts that say, in forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of karma.
Yeah. We're going to get into forgiveness today. That's part of the book we're going to talk about.
No, it's great, and that's important, right? And we're talking about the ego and labels,
right?
We want to put things in boxes. In order to stop putting those things in boxes, to understand how that energy transfers, you need to understand that it's not just me. It's self and other self. So, Jason, I understand that, yes, your name is Jason, but that's an egotistical thing. I'm putting you in a context that you're another human being in some sort of separate form. Right? But really, you and I are connected with the energy that we share. Even though we don't see it, you and I sure as hell feel it, do we not?
Oh, yeah. Of course. I mean, I've been around people where I could just automatically feel a negative energy.
Yeah, right out of the gate.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like, or like if you're around a group of people.
Right.
And you walk into a room.
Oh, and you know something's off.
Yeah, and you know something's off, yeah.
Whether the hair sticks up on the back of your neck or you feel it in your gut. But what do we tend to do? We're not very sensitive like we used to be, right? We tend to overlook it or push past it or assume that something else is going to play out, but we don't follow with that gut instinct. But we all damn well know. Think about the theme that people always tell you, follow your gut.
Right.
What do we do, though? We ignore it all the time. See,
I think our educational system, everything teaches us to ignore our gut.
Ignore our gut, right?
Right.
And you and I had talked sometime back, like on an earlier podcast.
And we could talk about gut biome and
yeah, gut biome, your second brain. You know what I mean? And
we're gonna do a podcast on that.
Yeah, no, we're totally guys. Buckle up, pull your pants up. We're going in deep. I do
want to interrupt you real quick because we had a synchronicity that happened.
Oh yeah, can we talk about that?
Yeah,
no, and that's another episode. We'll talk about the synchronicity.
But this is interesting. So we have on the podcast. This is kind of like we've done a couple on the Albuquerque Business Podcast and then Tartle Podcast, and we brought a couple beers.
Have we?
This time, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, really?
This time we got a cooler, and we want to talk about what happened.
Yeah. No, I
think people should understand. So I went to the 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
It's been around. You know, how long has 7-Eleven been around for?
Too long, frankly.
Yeah, and they have coolers you can buy.
$20,000 worth of cameras for $5 worth of stuff. Yeah, I was at the vet. He was at
the vet, so he's going to be about an hour late. And so I was like, I had bought some beer, and we're going to talk about this synchronicity here in a second. And so I stopped in a 7-Eleven because you were going to be about an hour late, and got one of those styrofoam, what do you call it, like foam coolers?
It's a foam cooler. Oh, nothing better
to have cold beer.
Nothing better for the earth than styrofoam. But go ahead, please.
I know.
We're all learning here. You and I, the listeners, the watchers, we're all learning.
Yeah, I should not have.
Yeah.
Here we go, synchronicity.
Yeah, shit. That's why.
Yeah. So I bought that. I said, hey, look, I got some beer outside. You bring it into the radio studio.
Yeah.
Which we're at 99.9 The Beat FM. You here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This is a nationwide.
That's right.
You know, so whether you're listening to this and you're experiencing rain, 30-degree weather, 45-degree weather.
Just remember.
Albuquerque has absolutely amazing, perfect weather. And it's dry.
It's
no
totally
humidity.
dry. And if you don't mind a rattlesnake every once in a while, this is probably where you should be.
Yeah, it's 80, 90 degrees all the time.
I feel good. I can wear pants at 95 degrees outside.
Yes, exactly. So so what happened, Alex, when you brought into the studio?
I am walking. First of all, he hands me this cooler. Thing weighs a metric ton. And I'm like, oh, I
only had 2 beers in it.
I only had 2 beers. Yeah, they must be like 40s or something like that. The second I step foot through the door, this thing explodes all over the bottom of the studio. I have ice and liquid everywhere. And I'm looking like, my God, were we supposed to bring this beer in here? But what did it do? It brought the beer we were supposed to drink to the top because I had to put it in a new cooler.
Yes, and so the stuff that was on the very bottom went to the top. And what do we have?
What do we have? Shameless plug. We have La Cumbre, a slice of Heffen. And talk about getting elevated, which is what it's telling us, is we're talking higher density living right here.
Yes, exactly. This is, let me show it to the camera right there.
Yo, let's give them a little
we're
plug.
Recording it, yeah. So Slice of Heaven, great beer. Isn't I mean, you're from back east, I'm from Seattle.
Yeah,
Isn't the beers here amazing?
Listen, the beers are fantastic.
Yeah.
The beers are good. Even the wine's good out here.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
Everybody wake up.
This is the last city of, I mean, we'll enjoy it for another 10 years, but this city is going to blow up. I mean, it's just
no, in a positive way.
Yes.
No, let's not say blow up. This is higher density living. It's going to bloom. Okay, can we keep it organic? You know what I mean? Last thing we need to do is nuke New Mexico again.
Yes, we don't want. Yeah. They're already trying to build a wall or something.
So in that synchronicity, guys, on our first eepisode, La Cumbre, a slice of Heffen, and getting elevated. That's what we do. This is higher density living.
So you went, because I'm gonna get into me here in a second.
Let's circle back. Circle back.
Yeah, we're gonna circle back because I want everybody to know who we are. So what led you into your, displaying this? You're seeing that you need a higher conscious.
Got it.
Are you tapping into?
Right.
Because it's not. I want people to understand, and maybe you could talk about this real quickly. It's not like something that you have to create.
No,
it's already there.
It's already there, and it's a matter of making yourself more sensitive to the thing that already exists, right? Now, if you look at the theory of the vacuum in physics, there's an energy to this area, this empty space, and what you find is that empty space is actually scalar. So
that's good, right?
As you move through, it doesn't matter how large or how small that vacuum is. The energy density of 1 cubic centimeter is the encompassing amount of total massive energy of everything in our universe. Wait a minute, hold on. You're telling me there's a mirror of size, irrespective of time and space, that shares the same amount of energy in something that's empty? So the thing that can't be seen, the thing that can't be felt, carries just as much energy as all the physical things combined in our entire universe. Really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How do I use that, right? So science, physics, has shown that it's there, that vacuum has energy, right? How do we use that vacuum? How do we use ourselves as a bioelectric tool?
I don't understand how we, explain this. So the military-industrial complex, we've all heard of that. It uses this energy.
Yes.
We've created massive amounts of technology that uses energy.
Right.
Why could we not use it as a collective for our personal selves?
Has no one considered it? Right? So you swing a magnet around inside of a giant copper circle. What do? You generate electricity. So what happens when I get my body, which is water and magnetism and electricity, and I consciously think about moving those particles in a certain direction? Would that not create a charge?
Yes. Yeah.
So people are like, wait a minute, how do you make that jump? Right? Let's make that jump. Jason, if I tell you to think about something positive, do you have any fun events coming up?
Yeah, I can think about a lot of different things positive. I like running, working out, taking my dog for a walk.
Let's do that. Let's do working out or taking the dog at the same time.
Right.
Now, the thought of taking your dog Zoe, right, on a run, does that make you feel good?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm
good.
accomplishing a lot of different things.
Let's check that off. That makes you feel good. Is that happening right now?
No.
You're not running the dog right now, are you?
Right.
You're going to run it in the future.
Right.
But thinking about it makes you feel good right now.
Yes.
So that's funny something non-physical happening in the future is having a physical impact on your body right now, just because you thought about it.
Yeah, and I think a perfect example of that is I can attest to this. Whether you have a bad food, so let's say somebody has a deviled egg.
Sure.
And it's 4th of July.
That's an interesting food choice you chose, deviled egg.
Deviled egg. No, because I think people could go in this scenario. It's 4th of July. The eggs have been sitting out. They're on the picnic table.
Yeah.
It's 95. It's 95 degrees with 95% humidity where you're from, right?
That's right. Put those things on ice right now.
No one has them on ice. They've just been sitting out there. You have one.
Yeah.
You get food poisoning.
Thank you.
So let's take.
Thanks, Aunt Karen.
Let's take. Yeah. Thanks,
I don't even
Karen.
have it on Karen, but I just figured Karen.
Thanks,
was gonna,
Karen.
Yeah.
So let's take that. 4 months later, you walk into a party. It's in the evening time. It's 40 degrees outside, and you see a tray of deviled eggs. And you physically. Guess what happens to you?
You reflect back to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Jason,
and then what happens?
Fantastic inverse example of what I just used.
Right.
You are now saying that something in the past, which caused a physical and emotional charge for you, now being thought of now, walking into that party, is affecting you right now.
Are those deviled eggs bad?
No, they could be fantastic.
Exactly.
They could have been. They could have been on ice.
Why is there this emotional and physical reaction happening?
That's right. What does that tell you? Right. That tells you that a thought or a thought form, right, the consciousness of what you are doing, is changing your physical state, how you feel, and that is the gateway to understanding that there are limitless possibilities to what we can achieve through meditation and consciousness and understanding ourselves better, becoming more sensitive to that world around us.
And this is something that we can share with others,
right?
Through our podcast of what we're discovering.
What we are discovering.
Right, in a non-judgmental way.
And this is just as much of a journey for you and I as it is for the individuals that are listening to this and sharing that journey with us.
Yeah, because somebody said something, I put a video out today, and then somebody had Snapchatted me, and they said, thank you for the videos. I hope that I can get, as good as you and better or whatever. And I'm thinking, cool. So I wrote back to them, and I was like, it has nothing to do with that. I was like, the reason I'm posting this is because I'm trying to deal with these issues inside of me.
That's right.
And I used a word. I don't think it's a word, but I was like, I have some fucked upness in me.
Yeah, no, and it's just, listen, it's true.
And I want everyone to know that.
Yeah.
That we're not sitting here as gurus on a mountaintop looking down at someone. I want us to do this together as being all and one.
I love it, because this is not just about me or just about you. This is a group effort of us all elevating ourselves. How we perceive our world, how we treat our world, how we live to a higher standard.
Right.
Or extraterrestrials would say, moving through your densities, right? Going from the third, the physical, to the fourth, you vibrate faster and faster and faster, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to show that interconnectedness.
So whether it's Zoe, my dog, it's you, right, Alex, and your girlfriend, or whether it's an orca well in Seattle.
Correct.
It does not matter. Or an older tree that's in New Orleans, an older oak tree. It's all one.
It's all as one, right? And that's a theme that I think we should always touch back to. And that possibility, that limitless understanding, that part of physics which hasn't fully been tapped into yet, at least not to our public understanding, is that is the thing that drives me forward in my own practice, my own journey of trying to understand myself and how I interact with this world and this universe that is around me. And what I thought was so far away was actually so close.
Close. It's in us.
It's inside of us. It's about turning the mirror in and looking inside at you.
Yeah, and I know I'm going to revert a lot. I know you have a different segue, and I'm going to go into my spiritual journey here.
Yeah, can you
quickly.
tell us, please?
Yeah,
can you walk us through the footsteps in the sand?
I'm going to go real quickly in there. I have more of a Christianity background. I know, majority of, if we have people here in America listening, maybe we'll have one or two on our podcast.
That's cool. Listen, if we have one or two, we've essentially doubled the thought power, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's a win for us.
It's a win for us, yeah. So, but, majority of the country is Judeo-Christian. So I grew up in a extreme Judeo-Christian fundamentalist home. And it was interesting because we came from the South. So my dad, he soon passed away, but my dad was from Georgia, South Georgia.
Wow.
Yeah. Tobacco, sharecropper, farmers. My mom's side of the family is from Jacksonville, Florida.
Nice.
So you have extreme southern roots, and I want people to understand that. So what do extreme southern roots, and some of you may be listening from the South, it was growing up in a Baptist denominational type home, where you're looking at everything and questioning everything. Everything was fear-based, because you're going to go to hell.
Fear-based. That goes back to my whole IRS thing. Keep going. I'm sorry. Guys, thing. I'm like a bad comedian. I always come back to the beginning.
No, I like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's a heaven and a hell. Not a slice of heaven.
Yeah, not a slice of heaven. I don't want the other one.
Heaven, yeah.
Yeah. No thanks for the deviled eggs.
There's a heaven and a hell. There's a devil, and there's, and there's Jesus, and you have to accept Jesus Christ as your personal savior to get the insurance ticket so that you don't go to where the worms are going to eat you.
Damn insurance companies.
Because it's eternal.
They get us all the time.
Forever and ever.
It's the insurance companies, right?
Yes, yeah. And so then you have guys that produce guilt and fear. They stand up at a pulpit, like old school, like you would picture. That's what it was, and it's like, bless God, and, yelling and screaming.
I'm sweating pounding. Right now thinking about this.
Yeah, we can say the sinner's prayer.
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me get down on my knees.
Yeah, and so there was that whole process. But, so what happened was when I turned 18, I was like, fuck all this. I don't want to be a part of any of this. So,
interesting.
Typical rebellion, rebellious teenager, whatever. So I joined the Marine Corps. My father was in the Marines. He was in Vietnam. So, even though I was like saying, screw all this, I still, at the same time it's funny how I copied my father, even though there was issues
it's
there.
It's what you knew.
Yeah, it's what I knew, yeah. So, in my level of conscious at the time. And joined the Marine Corps. I go to, make a long story short, I go to Somalia, Bosnia, Haiti.
Lovely places. Can I vacation there?
Yeah. And so, went through wars in all three of them. Saw a lot of bad things that happened. So, when I get out,
lower density things.
Yeah, a super lower density, young age, So I get out of the Marine Corps, and my parents had invited me to a conference, like a religious conference. And I had not been to church, not done anything. I mean, I was probably from a 1 to 10, I was probably like a -4. You know what I mean? As far as like angry, pissed. I mean, we would literally shoot from the helicopter with AC/DC playing.
Wow, you got a lot of good things going for you.
Yes. So I get out of the Marine Corps, and I'm looking, and I'm saying there's got to be something more, because I'm just feeling so, I'm having to decompress from everything that went on, and all that, and then seeing the worst of humanity, and dealing through that, and then having this empirical type viewpoint of like, I'm God, I can decide who I want to destroy, who I don't.
Right.
You have a lot of that. So I get out, go to this conference. I finally go. My parents are like, go. I go, and this is interesting because there's an older lady there that's a missionary to Africa. So, some of you know missionaries. Yeah. And so, I play this role out in my head because it's so interesting, and even though it was wrapped in religion, different religious stuff, but at the end of the day, what was interesting to me was I saw two parts. I saw in a pictures, because you remember the slide projectors?
Love those.
Yeah, there wasn't power. It was kind of like the original PowerPoint.
Yeah,
and it had a little plastic tray.
Had the circle, and you go.
Yeah,
let's go to the next one.
Was she showing the same huts that we had blown up?
Yeah,
and threw missiles through and everything else? Were the same huts that she was walking into, feeding people and, taking the time to, deal with the families and going through the struggles that they were. And I began to watch that. And
how do you internalize it? I want to know. By the way, this is $75 an hour I'm charging on this session.
So I'm sitting there thinking, all the bad that I did, sanctioned under the United States government, of course, which, we can
nice
get into
plug.
that some other time.
Plug. Keep it up.
The United States Marine Corps, which loved, had a great time, was awesome. But I'm thinking for my own life, how can I go 180 degrees out? So right then and there, I made the decision to, go full into religion. Because I thought in my own level of consciousness that that would be the place that I could do the most good.
Right.
And change, because, it's black, white. I felt real negative black. So this is the white,
There's a polarity to it where you can be like, I can just jump to this other side.
Right. Exactly. Right. So I went through seminary, did all that, became a church planner, Built a fairly good sized church in our denomination, and then became a pastor.
I didn't know this.
Yes. Yeah, this is interesting.
Sir, where's your collar?
Yeah, we had ties.
Oh, we had ties in this one.
Ties and suits. Yeah, it was more or less. But so went through all that, and then started about 9 years into it. Started to really realize something's wrong here. This, whether it's the structure of one or the structure of the other. So I began to start studying and reading things that began to not resonate with me in the little systems and structures that were put in that Baptist.
Nice word choice.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into that. That's another episode.
But and then I thought something was wrong with me. And then I thought then I started to feel guilty and there's people out here listening to this podcast and they're in this position.
They'll share this. They'll share this. Right.
Yeah. So I began to feel guilty. I was like, no, I'll go back to this. Maybe I need to, repent or ask for forgiveness or pray more. I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. There's different types of prayers. I was trying to figure all that out, and then I thought, there's always this play between you and the devil's going to get you or demons going to possess you.
Can I do a better prayer? Can I do, can I do more good to keep myself away from that line?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so finally I had to go through a crisis, which was a divorce, which in the pastor arena of being a Baptist pastor is no bueno.
That's really not a badge of honor. Yeah.
Yeah, they
don't like that.
Yeah, they don't want you being any part. So I took a sabbatical, never came back from that sabbatical. Which is awesome. My ex-wife, she's with the guy that she met and they've been together forever for years. So that's great for them. But at the end of the day, I look at it, and if I would not have experienced all of that, the bad, the good, to bring me to the point to where I'm at now, where I feel like I have an understanding of where I need to go. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I never want to say, of course I have the more I walk on that journey, the more I see, we all hear of, who is it? Joseph Campbell's the hero's journey.
Joseph Campbell. Yep. Hero's journey.
And,
that's
and
correct.
I love that because
helped with Star Wars and stuff. Yeah, please.
But I love that for me because it's like, okay, I went through the desert. I went through this area. I've gone through this, and we can put ourselves in the different scenarios of being, walking through that journey. But at the end of the day, I think it's brought me to a point, to an understanding that there is way more than what we can see physically, and I think religion is something that there's an emotion there when you get a group of people together and you start playing music.
Yes.
I mean, we could go to a church right now.
Yeah.
And they play amazing music and we can feel that energy and it would feel like there's something there.
Even an opera, rock concert.
Right.
It's
a U2 concert.
A U2. Yeah.
Coldplay sounds the same as me to praise and worship music.
Same thing. You know what I mean? But it gives you that elevated good inside,
Right.
And Jason, that's a big journey, right? Mm-hmm. And when we start to look at that, I talk about pain and internal pain. I can take a lot of physical pain, right? And I was bullied heavily when I was younger. I was plump. You kidding me? I was one of those fat kids that didn't really.
Yeah, but you're like super skinny now.
I didn't lean out.
How tall are you?
6'5".
And how much do you weigh now?
I weigh 187.
Yeah.
Nice low blood pressure, guys. I'm feeling real good. We'll talk about the diet later. But there are things that we internalize throughout our life that we need to reflect on, right? And that pain that we look at, and pain's an interesting thing, is pain is a teaching point, right? So what do we do with it, right? And your choice is to apply that to, okay, I built up a massive amount of karma with the things I've done in the past,
right?
Choosing to end people's lives, right?
Right.
Whether or not they said it was okay, right? I didn't give them that free will. I have become a pastor. I've built homes. I've made poor choices. I've been through divorces, and I've been labeled in boxes. Those are all certain functions of this pain and this learning that you need to go through, how you deal with that karma that you created. I've made tons of poor choices, right? But it's defined a lot of the characteristics or my perspective of how I want to move through my world. What is next on my journey, right? Where's my spirit going to go? And what do I choose to do with it, right? Do I diminish that flame, right? Do I hide it back and then pretend to be something I'm not? Or do I choose something more difficult, like you have done, and try to learn from it and apply it to then challenge myself on a journey that I'm actually uncomfortable with because I truly don't know. It's like the Joker card. You notice that the Joker on a tarot is stepping off the cliff. So is it the question of the man is a fool, or the man believes in something that cannot be seen and chooses to take that path?
But I think that's a paradox of where we're at in life.
That's a paradox.
I mean, all of us, and we have that choice to make to walk away from that cliff.
Yes.
And be comfortable.
Right.
And not seem like the fool.
Right.
Or we can, and that's something we're going to need to get into, because I think there's a lot of people listening to this right now that are at that moment.
Yeah.
Because what would make somebody, if they see higher density living and they read a little bit of our podcast, and maybe they're on iTunes or whatever, and they decide to download an episode.
Right.
What they're searching.
They're searching for something. You didn't just come across it. Maybe it is synchronistic, right?
Right.
Maybe this is some sort of key or something that you were supposed to pay attention to, or a trigger in your consciousness that you're like, wait a minute. Is this a turn in my journey I'm supposed to take? Instead of going forward in my footsteps, should I take the 1 degree change now and be 100 degrees to the left or 100 degrees to the right than where I typically would have been, right? People will move there. We'll find that, and people will search for this, and they want to understand. They want to feel that journey, and we're asking them to come and learn with us, move through those steps, share in this emotion of our stories, our understanding, our search, and applying this principle of all of one to get to that state of a higher density living, right?
Right.
To vibrate higher. And
I want people to understand it's not an easy road to hoe, because at the end of the day, and I'm going to correlate a lot to Christianity because I believe Jesus was of a higher conscious, and a lot of his teachings.
We'll dip into that. That's
but
cool.
he said something that is really interesting to me, and I've just fully understand it within the last month. He said, if you want to understand spirituality, you're going to have to leave your mother, leave your father.
Correct.
And then it said in those scriptures, it said that many walked away after they heard that. They're
like, what are you talking about, dude?
Yeah.
Like, no.
No, that's my family, and it's going to, when you get serious with this, it's going to lead you, like you said, that 1 degree turns into 100 degrees.
Yeah. Because at that point, when you walk away, not in a negative fashion,
right,
but you are willing to question the dogmas, the ideologies, the perspective of your parents, the people who are closest to you, your social groups. You're willing to question that. And that makes...
Or maybe a relationship.
Or even a relationship.
That's been there for 9 years.
Is uncomfortable, right? Because you don't want to rock that boat.
Right.
But you don't know... But what you don't know, you know that you're comfortable in that scenario. You're comfortable with the black and whiteness of those dogmas, ideologies, perspectives, social groups. What you don't know is the gray. And the gray is where those things blend, where you leave the ego, you step into other paths, other realms, you start to question the things that you were comfortable with to find that there are other answers, there are other directions that you can take, right? And that might be painful. That might be you forgiving and relinquishing a lot of karma that you've created in those other groups.
But and you're using a word painful, and it's something that I've had to understand. But pain is self-created.
You bet it is.
So, yeah. I mean, if we want to identify with pain, we have to understand that we're putting that label on it.
Yeah, we're the ones that decide. You let it affect you, okay? If someone is having a bad day, if we go back to our original talk, right, of what goes around comes around, if it ruins your day, you let that affect you. You let that pain transfer to you, right? Rather than elevating yourself above it and trying to flood that pain or whatever that person might have had, that conscious thought, and giving them the good, right? Override that negative thought form, right? And that pain. And now the pain I felt, you felt pain being a pastor, being in the military, with your father, the Bible Belt, all those other things that are happening. My pain, and again, going back to the IRS, is that I felt the pain of debt. Debt was something that I resonated with because I find that there is a struggle, there is an oppression designed to debt that I currently don't like in the financial system. And I knew that with the moderately minimal amount of debt that I currently have from the choices I have made throughout my life has caused me to feel a certain way. And I was blaming the debt, right? But what I didn't reflect on was that I was the person that put myself in that circumstance. I was the one that created that pain.
But how many people are listening right now? What's the percentage of the population that's listening right now that has student loans? And what is the percentage of the population that has probably over $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of debt?
Thank you. And a massive amount, right? That pain that I felt, some sort of bridge or connection happened inside of me, where I realized I'm not the only person sharing in this feeling. And then I began to feel this overwhelming sense of all the pain people feel in their choices. The eroding of their liberties because their own freedom and sovereignty, because they have to make choices they otherwise wouldn't make to fix that debt. But they only realized it after the fact where they got themselves into it.
That's so good.
They weren't educated enough or, warned enough ahead of time not to make that choice because of how much it will restrict the choices you make in your life later. And that pain that I felt global. And in that moment is when I changed as an individual. My path for what I wanted to create, what I wanted to do in business, where my spirituality went with feeling that I could feel the pain of people all over the globe that was self-inflicted because we created a tool that was misused and misinformed on people.
Well, it's a tool, especially here in the United States, that's used politically to put people in office.
Yeah.
Because, on both sides, I'm not going to go one side or the other, and I don't want to be that. But when you look at it, like you look at the right,
sure,
and you have people that are upset because they are $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in debt, and they feel like the government hasn't done anything. And so then we put the current president, President Trump, into office.
Yeah.
But then you look at the elite and you look at the blue side of things and you look at people that are successful and they're feeling guilty. A lot of people I've talked to that are they're feeling guilty and feel like they need to vote blue so that they can implement some of these, they want the government to take care of the whole side, and they're willing to pay those taxes because they want the government to come in and help and step up and help humanity. So both sides, there's this fear, guilt, anger that resonates all because of debt.
All because of debt. And, it's funny. You want the government to step in, right?
Right.
To fix something that is limiting to your spirit as a human being. Okay? And that's a self-inflicted choice. But you are now asking for somebody outside of that choice who never made it for you to help you with this, to relieve you of the thing you chose to put yourself into. Right? You haven't. You're not taking the time to learn the lesson of which you have created. And if this is a group lesson, this is a very difficult lesson for all of us to learn. Right? So instead of going to ask for that help or choosing a political side to vote for, those are people in the government that make these choices.
Right.
You're an individual making your own choice. Make that choice. Don't assume somebody else can make a better choice for you. No one knows you better than you know yourself.
Yeah, but on both sides, when you look at it, it just panders to that whole victim mentality.
And you don't want that mentality. It's a lower mentality.
Why do I need somebody external to fix me?
You don't. You don't. And when you look at debt, you're asking for more than what you can actually use. Okay? It's an asset base, like your energy. Okay? You have all this negative energy. The negative energy can outweigh the positive assets we have in place, our emotions, right? And it can pile up quickly. So the key is to find the inverse of that, is to do that self-reflection, understand the choices that you make, work with these tools, and be like, okay, I need to move myself out of it. Or even as a group, we need to come to an understanding that there's a little bit more than just a financial burden that happens here. It's an emotional burden, and it's a limitation of your freedom, okay? It's almost like a new form of slavery that you put yourself into. No one made you sign the contract.
Right.
No one forced you to go to school and take that note out. That was your choice. A library card would have cost you $350 a month. And you'd probably blow everybody out of the water. But the point is that pain that I felt, that flood of energy, is the thing that led me to my journey.
Right.
Okay? And I know the IRS sounds absolutely insane, but debt is something near and dear to my heart, and I want to do what I can to teach and give the world other options to move themselves away from it, to understand.
No, yeah, it's perfect. And that pain led you into starting your company.
It led me into starting my company. And on the other side, it led me to read the books I wanted to read, the philosophies, the economic and social principles, applying that with physics. And then where do I find myself? You find yourself in spirituality.
And it's so funny because whether you're at a -4 in your life on a scale of 1 to 10, getting to a 2 can be a great thing.
It could be a great thing.
People don't realize that. And I talk to people all the time. I was talking to someone the other day and she's like, I'm single. And so we were talking about going out on a date and all that. And I talked to her on the phone and it was really interesting because she was like, you're not going to want to, go out with me. And I'm like, why? And she goes, I'm this, I'm that, just tons of labels, and she goes, you're successful. And I'm like,
on whose judgment, on whose perspective? What is it for you to say, I can't make a choice?
And then, we were supposed to go out. And then later that evening, she sends a text and she goes, I got with my family and I'm drunk. So sorry, and I just thought of it. It's like, we sabotage, and I do this, and I know we all do. We'll sabotage.
Self-sabotage.
Yeah, we'll self-sabotage. Whether it's debt, like maybe you're sitting out there and you've had job opportunities to go somewhere, and you're like, no, but this job is comfortable, and I'm making $15 an hour, and here's where I'm at, and I can struggle.
But it's not.
I've struggled for.
But Jason, it's not emotionally connecting with what you really want to do.
Right.
Right. It's not at that what yogis would call your heart center.
But I hate that automatically there's this, because if, like, personally, I just experienced this. If you eliminated all that, there would have been 2 people that could have maybe possibly made a connection.
Right. There might have been an opportunity, a door that opened.
Yes. But what happened was at the end of the day, and I text back even afterwards. I want everybody to know. I text back. So
not just ghost it. That was a bad idea.
No, I was like, hey, I made like a little joke, didn't hear anything. But it's like, why would somebody feel like they're less than?
Correct.
And I feel like debt and this level of consciousness that we have, especially here in the United States, a lot of people are feeling less than. So in turn, they're looking for things externally
rather than internally.
Right.
Awesome. Totally awesome. And debt is just one function of that, right? It's the self-inflicted nature of what we've done, right? And you feel that if you made a choice, like, I want to be a dog groomer, right? But I can't do that because I can't service the debt that I've created for myself. Mm-hmm. So now what my heart truly wants to do is now limited.
Right.
There's a self-limitation, right? There's a self-destructive nature to the choices that I've made. So instead of me looking beyond that and realizing that, okay, these tools and how we look at ourselves and how we view that something is the other or something is less, right? And that I can't do that is the thing that is destroying us in our spiritual, beautiful nature, the freedoms that we naturally have.
Yeah. And I mean, dog grooming, that's so funny. I just listened to a podcast with Cesar Millan.
And is this a synchronicity right now?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So he came from Mexico. He came here to the United States, and he started as a dog groomer. Because he knew, he always played with dogs. And, there's feral dogs and stuff like that in Mexico. I mean, it's crazy. I can only
imagine.
Yeah. So he comes here. He starts off as a dog groomer because that's where he knows, he's getting paid like under the table, typical scenario in California.
Yeah.
And he keeps following his passion, And he even talked about this. He stumbled, went through divorce, all kinds of stuff because he didn't know how to handle the fame.
Sure.
And went through that. But at the end of the day, he looked back and he goes, regardless, whether I was making $6 an hour under the table or where I can do a National Geographic TV show and make $200,000 on one episode, he goes, I've always followed my passion. And it's funny that you brought dog groomers because I just listened to that. But that's somebody that you can see. You don't realize because you're looking at dog groomers, I'm not going to make very much money. But you don't know where you can go to that next level.
No.
You start making YouTube videos on dog grooming.
Who knows where
and
it
you're
goes?
The best dog groomer in Dallas, Texas.
You don't know where it takes you.
You have no idea.
Do you know what connects? You know when someone's passionate about something? You begin to feel that passion.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no passion when you talk about money. Money is not a passion. Mm-mm. Money is a tool, right? And
that's why the banks look so beautiful when you walk in. There's so much art.
There's so much
it's
art.
gray and white marble.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bank.
Bankers are amazing.
They're
amazing
creatures. Yeah, wait, let's hold on a second. Don't take any offense to that. I don't want to put someone in a box here.
I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, literally, they work at a bank. And they're like, I walk in, and they like the whole atmosphere, she was like, I like said shit, and everybody just stopped and looked at me like, and then it was like an issue when they talked about me.
Do you know how quickly they like fire me out of that bank?
Oh yeah, me too.
I got like a sailor's mouth that I'm trying to cull right now. You know?
I'm on the podcast, and I think I've already.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I have a Marine Corps mouth. That's worse than a sailor's mouth.
It's even worse. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I'm just merchant Marine.
I love those guys. They were awesome.
But it's not when it's a lack of respect for yourself. Nothing else.
Right.
Right. And when you can learn to respect yourself and who you are and the comfort in your own skin, you can respect somebody else.
Right.
And then you realize that there's no differentiating factor, that there is a connectedness, there's a oneness between us. Right. And then the blame goes away. The negative thoughts disappear. Okay. We move into a realm where I don't look at Jason anymore. I look at me and other me. You know what I mean? And then to tie it in a little stranger, it's not that I'm seeing Jason with my eyes. It's that my eyes are perceiving something and pushing that into my mind, which my mind then creates that picture. Right. So is it to tell that Jason is actually sitting in front of me, or is Jason actually something that is a figure happening inside my own head?
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, because at the end of the day, and we're going to get into this after our break, but we're going to get into a book by Russell Targ, and he talks about that your mind is totally different than your body.
Right, and we're going to talk about where consciousness actually starts from.
And I think that'll be awesome. We don't have a sponsor right now. We're looking at one.
No, we're looking at one. And
we do kind of have. I mean, I have a company. You have a company.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that right now. So why don't you go,
Let's do
Alex?
a little plug. So, guys, this
During
is
our break.
This is brought to you by Turtle.co, the world's first digital identity exchange, which allows you to anonymously sell the information that you create every day online and receive that value stream that you didn't get in the first place.
And I love the question you asked me when I first was talking to you about this. Is like, how much did Facebook or Google pay you last year for the information you're giving them to be able to give it to merchants and then turn around? And on my side, I have a digital marketing company, and that's what we do.
Correct. That's what you do.
Data.
But what about everybody else? What about the rest of the 70% of Americans? Hold on a second. Let me get close to the mic. 0.
But we take that data and we turn around and we do targeted ads, whether it's Snapchat stories, Instagram, Facebook, Google ads, whatever it may be. And then we dish that data right back up to you and have you buy things.
And what did you get? Nothing. You've spent twice.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Rather than get paid for the source information that you create and help solve some of the world's toughest problems. Turtle.co. Free to sign up.
Have you seen, I don't know if we talked about this yet. Have you seen the new Heineken commercial?
Are you talking about the one with the two individuals of different sexual tastes?
Yeah, see, and so we're going to talk about digital marketing. I think right here, people need to, if you haven't watched this, it's on YouTube. If you haven't watched this, you need to watch. So they had two sexual different preferences. One was far right, one was far left, right?
Sure.
One was, what would you say, lesbian?
Yeah, she was definitely lesbian. Yeah, and I think she openly stated that.
Yeah, and then the other one was kind of more far right, Christian type.
Yeah, like, I don't mess around with those people. They are the other.
And so they interviewed them. See, this is creative marketing. This is conscious level marketing.
Yeah, this is
your beer company.
This is the first step to this. Yes. This is a higher level of marketing. So let's go into it and then we'll break. So go for it.
And then just real quick. And so they interview her, and of course she's telling her story where she's at, in life, far left, lesbian. They interview him, far right, doesn't associate with any of that. And then they ask them to build a bar.
People to come together on a common goal.
Right. And they don't really know each other as far as where they're at.
Yeah, because the background was privately shared with us, the audience.
Right, with the rest of the audience. So then they come in and they have to build a bar for Heineken, and so then they do that. And then what happens at the end?
What they find is that these two came together to build something positive, and then they're shared the backgrounds of who these people truly are and how they think. Mm-hmm. Little strains that people could be cooperative and work together on a common goal when they remove the ideologies and the perspective and the egotistical boxes they put on one another. And what did you find? Something magical happened, right? What did they do? Mm-hmm. They shared a beer. Mm-hmm. Did they not?
Yes, they did.
There's a common thread linked between all of us, that oneness.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And that's the type of energy that I feel like the podcast and what we want to put out there.
Right.
And if you're listening to this and you can make it through Alex's little rules and regulations as far as where we're at, we would love to be able to look at you as a sponsor.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
But it has to be something that's going to
elevate us, whether it's through diet, consciousness, learning, and showing that there's a connectedness and there's greater good outside of yourself that we can do. We can elevate not only ourselves but people around us, right?
Yeah, and we will will have higherdensityliving.com.
That's correct.
So, and then you can go on there, and our email addresses will be on there. And
on its way.
Yeah, you can email Alex.
Guys, questions, concerns, you can tell us the show's absolute junk. Maybe we should do something else. But, and please, any topics, we'd love to move into it. And if you guys have ideas for people or things we want to talk about.
Look within, and live your life on the edge of two worlds. A reality where you find true understanding of who you are. The learning is done. Become the teacher in embodying the oneness of all. Walk the cliff's edge between the seen and the unseen realities. Become a higher density being. Please go to www.higherdensityliving.com.
And we're back with the Higher Density Living podcast with Jason Rigby and
Alexander McKeag. Welcome back, everyone. All is one.
Yes, all is one. And what I'm excited about is today we're going to get into a book that you shared with me, Alex. It's called Limitless Mind with Russell Targ.
That's right, Russell Targ.
And I've got literally, if you could look right now, I have a bunch of notes. I even have a picture of Russell Targ right here.
Oh yeah, we got to go. We'll put him up on the camera over here so that everyone can enjoy.
So everybody can see it.
What a fabulous portrait!
If they want to go on YouTube,
yeah,
and look, yeah.
Oh my God!
Can you see that?
Look at that mugshot.
That's amazing. But it's called A Guide to Remote Viewing and Transformation of Consciousness. He also wrote another book called The Author of Miracles of the Mind, and I kind of want to get into a little bit. I'm going to read a little bit of the foreword on here, and then I want you, if you don't mind, Alex, to kind of go into, as I read or as we have a discussion of this, we're going to get into Russell Targ in particular.
Love it.
But I want to kind of start off with this so people know with this. And if you're looking, that's what the book looks like. You can see all my...
So are we reading audiobooks? Are we charging for this narration?
Yes, we should.
Yeah.
No, Russell Targ is going to charge us.
Yeah, he's going to charge us. Thank you very much.
Yes. It says, in this small book is compressed a world of ideas, a formula for new ways of being.
Love that.
Yes. Within a sturdy background of scientific research, I love that, and
Hefty
years
research
of conclusive studies, it presents a perspective on our humanity that until now would have seemed more mythic than real.
Now consider the keywords he used there. It wasn't a function of living.
Right.
It's a function of being. Okay? Mm-hmm. It's the in the moment right now. Living is under the assumption that there's a start and there's an end. Being is a function of something that's irrespective of time.
Right.
Okay? Very choice words that he's using.
Yes.
All right? And then can you read the last sentence again?
Yeah. He said, it presents a perspective on our humanity that until now would have seemed more mythic than real.
Thank you. So now this is not a label. This is not a picture. The word perspective is something non-physical, right?
Right.
So when he talks about a perspective of humanity, it's how we view ourselves and how we view ourselves in this world around us, right? And what people would assume is the other, right? So very choice words that he's choosing here.
Yes, right off the bat. And then something like I like what he talked about here is he said, laws change, habits dissolve. New forms and functions emerge whenever an individual or society learns a new behavior.
Correct.
This is because we are all connected through what Sheldrake?
Yeah, Rupert Sheldrake
calls morphogenic fields.
The morphogenic fields. So Rupert Sheldrake was looking at a couple of different things. And the first part of his field study was with dogs. Going back to our dog thing. We're talking about dog groomers and the vet.
We need to know. I have a dog and you have two dogs.
I got
you
two
just
dogs.
Got a new one,
yeah.
And you just spent $300 at the vet
today. It's unreal. At the drop of a hat, folks.
Because they had pond water.
Yeah, he was drinking all this pond water. I don't know if he's got like Giardia or know what, but whatever. He's got the shot. He's happy as can be. Anubis is back to good health, even though he's the god of death in Egypt. Don't worry about it. He's going to live.
Zoe has stunted growth because she had parvo when she was little and barely made it.
Oh, I thought it was all the weightlifting, coffee, and cigarettes.
So she has really tall legs, kind of a smaller body, because as a puppy, she literally, thanks to my ex-girlfriend and her mom, they literally spent 24/7 making sure that she wasn't dehydrated.
That's very nice.
And brought her, yeah. So that's awesome.
That's very.
This is a subnote of dogs. Okay,
thank you.
Let's get into.
Shit. Oh yeah.
I don't think Rupert
Sheldrake
had anything to do with dogs, did he?
No, he did. So here's his first study. Okay, he would film dogs all day long when the owner would leave the house and then return, and they realized that the dogs would sense the very moment the owner made the choice to return home, not when it was right outside of the door. But when the owner made the conscious choice to be like, I'm done at this party, I'm now leaving work, I don't want to do this anymore, something else came up, I want to come back. And at that moment...
Regardless of time.
Right. And that dog at that moment would go and sit to the door and wait. The moment that owner had made that conscious choice.
So the blue, green, red particles you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Separate of time.
So your dog is the green and you're the red.
Right.
You've come together, but now you've separated. So irrespective of space and time, when you've made a conscious choice in this, what Sheldrake calls the morphogenetic field,
right,
it has altered the state of the dog to where the dog could feel and sense something that was non-physical, causing it to become alert and wait for the owner to come home.
Yeah, and he goes into that in a little bit more detail in the book here, and I want to read this. He says, we know, for example, that people in the 20th century learned to ride bicycles and use machines more quickly and effectively than did people in the 19th century. Similarly, today's children and adolescents learn to use computers in ways that seem beyond the competence of their parents. Or as an adult friend once said, when he couldn't get a computer program to work, let's call in an expert, get the kid next door.
That's correct. And what they found is that with this field, right, there's this collective consciousness is what they call it. There's a fabric woven in between these thought forms that we all share. So when you think you're an isolated being, right, you're by yourself, what scientifically has been proven otherwise, beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Just to make this clear, scientific proof, so people understand this, is not law. Scientific proof only states that beyond a reasonable doubt, this outcome will occur.
Right.
That is what that is saying. That is what is considered scientific proof.
Like the law of gravity, where we've seen that be, and he talks about that in here, where a monk elevates.
Yeah. Gravity's been tested and tested and tested, and beyond a reasonable doubt, the same outcomes happen. I throw a rock up, the rock falls, right? And those have been our physical studies. And now you start to apply non-physical studies to it. Now, when we talk about Targ, so can we go back to that passage you just read, if you don't mind?
No, that's fine. Yeah. Where he was talking about, he said, children, some autistic people, savants, people in life-threatening situations, animals who know just when their masters have gotten on the bus to come home, all are participating in this phenomenon.
Right.
But what is behind it? And I think that's the question that he wants to put in the whole book.
He's trying to answer. So if you look at the old Vedic scripts, okay, in India, much older than the Bible, they have this understanding that there are these jewels that hang around, these etheric jewels in the sky. And it connects this fabric between all of us, right? And when you change one of those jewels, that information can be read and felt and transmitted across the entire fabric of the universe.
And I don't want to get people to get, Alex, I don't want people to get hung up on the jewel part.
No, don't.
Or when you go in the Bible and, you know, it talks about, these are there at their level of consciousness at the time and what they knew what it looks like.
Thank you. Guys,
a chakra could look like a jewel.
Right. It's perspective, right? The people of Central and South America did not understand what a Spanish, frigate ship looked like, right? It is out of their conscious identity, so you're not going to see it until it's very close to you.
Right.
Right? But once you understand what that is, that consciousness imprint of some object,
right,
you can now view that thing at a distance. You can understand. Your mind can put together the pieces that your eyes otherwise would not be able to see. So the consciousness is defining what you actually know at a distance, right? Not the eyes. So let's go back. So these children or these people are learning to ride bikes faster. People are becoming better at computers. This morphogenetic field, this connection is that when one person learns, we all learn, and we begin to learn faster.
That's when the mile was broken in the 1930s.
That's when the mile was broken. Someone's like, okay, you can break the 4-minute mile. Wait a minute. Now it's possible. I can break that 4-minute mile. The consciousness of that idea has now spread out where people are like, okay, I can feel and think and move past that, right? There's an elevation on it. One person begins to ride bikes better, the next person does, right? Because everyone's doing it. It's shared in this collective consciousness. And one of the funny things they had was Rupert Sheldrake. I don't know if he was the gentleman who had children, but someone did. That they were teaching them to take tests in school was to start with the back of the test. Was select the entire class, answer all the questions in front so that when you go back, you have a higher probability of getting the answers correct in the beginning because the collective group has gone through to think about the answers first.
I like that, yeah.
Interesting, right? And beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Beyond that, to move to scientific proof, beyond chance, which is a big thing when you talk about physics, that this morphogenetic field, this collective group consciousness that is connected, this oneness, is actually possible.
And I think what he's talking about here, and I like this, he says, the individuals have gone beyond the bandwidth of local perception and memory and entered a field of knowing in which much larger information can be assessed via the quantum hologram.
Let's stop right there.
Yes.
There's a lot
We're on third page of the Ford.
As people, this is on page 3 of 4. In the corporate world, they say, let's unpack this.
Right.
My God, corporate words make me sick. So, okay, we have hologram. Let's go over a list here. We have the hologram, beyond the locality of something. These are choice words. So let's start with locality. Because you haven't read the book, and we're going to explain this to you, locality deals with a function of time and space or space-time. It's where an object or an understanding sits at this current second. And he's saying the non-locality of a thought or an idea becomes expanded. There's a sense of knowing beyond the locality. So something that you have never been accustomed to, or something that is out of your physical reach of understanding or perceiving, can be perceived with your mind's eye. That the consciousness can access something outside of your time, outside of your physical space, and then get information on that is accurate beyond chance. That's what he's talking about here. And when he says, in order for that to happen, there must be something involved with a hologram. And holograms deal with what people would call is the fractal universe. That if I have a diamond, okay, and I cut off a piece of that diamond, now I have 2 diamonds. But regardless, it's not less of a diamond or more of a diamond. It's just a diamond at a different scale, a different size.
Right.
It's holographic. It's one image of the larger or the larger of the smaller, right? It's a greater piece of the whole or a lesser piece of the whole.
So regardless if there's 4 billion or 9 billion, it's still humanity as a whole.
It's still humanity as a whole, right? That is the holographic nature. So what it's saying is it doesn't matter if we have millions of us as little people.
Right.
The totality of our image, our consciousness, is a group consciousness, a group image of who we are.
So we're still diamonds. Like, was it Katy Perry?
Yeah.
Shine bright like a diamond.
Shine bright like a diamond, right? So all the diamonds, the sum becomes the whole, right? And that's the fractality. That's the holographic nature of our universe. And so his contention, as we're going to get into, is that the only possibility, the only physical scientific explanation they can have is that the universe must be fractal, that time and space are not real. Because if our consciousness were to understand things beyond our local system, right, what you and I are viewing and feeling and thinking right here, that it has to be fractal, that it's just a piece of a greater scale, that it's all the same.
And I want everyone, I'm going to pause because I want everyone, before we get back into the book, to understand the author.
Yeah, let's go.
I think that's really important. Interrupt me, Alex. Russell Targ, he was a physicist, and he was an author, and he was in the pioneer in the development of the laser and laser applications. He was co-founder of the Stanford Research Institute, an investigation into psychic abilities in the 1970s to 80s.
That's correct.
The CIA actually used him. NASA used him.
Correct.
Nazis,
multiple
in NASA. We talked about that in our
multiple California police departments.
Yes.
Yep.
So we're talking about somebody now. He was in charge of the lasers with what company?
Oh, the company he was originally working with. I don't remember.
It's Lockheed Martin Missiles and Space Company.
Oh, that's right, Lockheed Martin.
How could that? Senior staff scientist.
Yeah,
and he developed that. So. He developed airborne laser systems for detection of wind shear.
Yes.
So this guy that is not some guy that self-proclaimed guru.
No.
That turned around and, is 22 years old. We see that all the time. These life coaches that are 18 online.
Let me tell you how to live your life. Buddy, what have you done? You know,
you're filming this in your parents' basement.
Yeah.
No, and I know there's a lot of people, and they're entrepreneurial, and I'm so happy for them.
Good for them. You know, it's awesome.
Yeah, good for them. But at the end of the day, he wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books.
Right.
He adds out. He was in charge of the proceedings of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers.
Yes.
He was with the proceedings of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. He has a BS in physics from Queens College. And he did graduate work in physics at Columbia University.
Yep.
So, you know, I mean, this guy...
He's no slouch.
Yeah.
No, and he's well vetted by not only the government, but the private sector, especially in the military-industrial complex, for what this man has created.
And the USSR tried to get him with the Academy of Sciences on this research with remote viewing.
Yes.
Because we know in the 1980s, I mean, we don't want to get into this right now, but we know the Soviet Union was delving heavily into this.
What we would call a psychic spy.
Right. Yeah,
right.
A psychic spy. And we know that there were studies done that he did.
Yes.
I think he has another book on this where they were able to spy being remote.
Yeah, so they actually found where the Russians were building nuclear submarines, how they transported them, what the devices look like, the layout of those areas, by using more intuitive individuals, right, to create a picture in their mind's eye of something they've never seen before, but put together information and tell people where to look, which is later what the hell is the word?
Corroborated?
Corroborated.
Oh, yes.
So the information corroborated on what this person saw in their mind's eye with what was physically found after they were told where to search to find out that that information was, in fact, 80 to 90% accurate.
Yes.
Which is frankly amazing. Mm-hmm. Right? So this guy with this massive background has put together this huge study, and he's gone from not only a man of physics, but he's applied that background of science and understanding, right? That unbiased research.
And testing.
Right. And put that into the non-physical realm, working with spirituality.
Right.
He's made that gap, and with that gap and that research, he was able to receive funding from these larger groups like the CIA, the U.S. Army, NASA, to run these projects and to help us do things that otherwise we would have not been able to do.
Yeah, it was so funny. He was in San Francisco giving a lecture, and one of the head guys of, it was CIA and NASA or something, pulled him onto an island, and then the guy that was in charge at the time of NASA, which was, you know, a Nazi in the beginning.
Yes.
What was his name?
Werner von Braun.
Yes. Actually went to him personally and said, how can we get the astronauts to communicate? Was it with the equipment or
without equipment?
Yes,
right?
without equipment. Yeah.
So if they're in a point in space, or you go behind the moon, radio signals cannot go through the moon. Right. So you lose contact with that individual. So their contention was, can we use the programming or the methodology created by Russell Targ at SRI to do a communication with these astronauts outside of using radio technology? So no matter where we spent them, we could always be in some form of communication
with them. Right.
We could see what they see without being there.
Right.
And that's what they were testing.
It's so funny how quick the military-industrial complex and governments are to grab onto this.
Well, is it not a strategic advantage?
Oh, of course.
It might be something on the fringe. Right. And it's funny how difficult it is for us as a society to be like, oh, that's foo-foo, we're not going to deal with that.
Right.
But the people who have massive amounts of control that are worried, hopefully, about safety, right, are like, we're willing to look at the fringe. We're willing to put money and back into something that might actually have some proof, some validity to it.
Yes.
So it's not that we should continue to ignore something like this.
Right.
There may be something there.
No,
so let's go a little further. What do we got here?
No, and so the book, Russell Targ, PhD, it's called Limitless Mind, A Guide to Remote Viewing and a Transformation of Consciousness.
Thank you.
So I want people to know if you can get it in Kindle, you can get it on Amazon.
You can get it on Amazon. Guys, dirt cheap. Go to ABE Books. Don't pay more. Just buy something used. Come on, you don't need to print something.
Exactly.
Out.
And then one of the things that he talks about is, and one of the questions is, why bother with ESP? We're going to get into ESP a little bit because people look at that and they're like, oh, like you said, foo-foo fringe.
Ooh, extrasensory perception. ESP.
But one of the things that he talks about in Buddhist theory is it's called the Great Perfection. And it teaches us to look directly at our awareness and experience the geometry of consciousness. That's what he talks about.
Keyword geometry. Go ahead.
The geometry of consciousness, the relationship of our awareness to the space-time in which we live.
Great.
That's a Buddhist tenet.
That's a Buddhist thing. And
Right.
geometry is important. And he explains this in a further scientific format, right? And we can delve into this later, but you have these things called vectors. And a vector is a direction in mathematics. You have on your regular plot, and we've all seen this in school in algebra, is X and Y.
Right.
All right. But then you start to implement something like a Z. And a Z says, okay, now I'm shifting this X and Y, this plane. So now something becomes two-dimensional, becomes three-dimensional. So when he talks about geometry, it's how do I take myself here in this little spot and move
Right.
myself to another point in three-dimensional time?
I love that. Yeah.
Okay. And the geometry is important. So he will, in the book, he expands upon how the Buddhists use these philosophies and how this actually applies to this extrasensory perception, right? And how with their understanding and how they described it, he can take his scientific understanding and meet at this middle ground, this joining of technology and the human spirit.
Yeah, and he uses a word, and I love it. It's called expanded awareness. And he says it's the experience of spaciousness, and and he clarifies it by saying it's not about self-improvement.
No.
Because it's our gaining power.
That's
because those
ego.
are the two things that people want to use.
That's ego,
Yes.
right?
Right. Self-improvement or gaining power. That would be the government, or
That's correct.
he even got into people were using it to try to do trading, in the silver market.
To make financial gain.
Right.
And when you apply the ego, you put things in boxes, it actually decreases the progression
Right.
of you in that, what they would call a psychic space, right? Your spiritual enlightenment is halted, right? It's cut short. It's not as quick as a progression. You don't move to the higher density because you are focused on your own personal gain rather than elevating yourself and others. It now becomes a me against them rather than me with everyone else.
And for me, reading this book, what really tagged me and I think was super important, and I want everyone, whether you're intellectual, whether you're just, middle-class Joe like I am, when he talked about expanded awareness and spaciousness and all that, he said really it's all about self-realization.
Correct.
And that goes into discovering who we really are.
Right. And this is what we talked about in the beginning of the show.
And it can be revealed in a lot of different ways.
Right. And we find that through all these different experiences, synchronicities, whether it be beer or hard choices we make or the pain we feel in our life, right? How do we come to that point? How do we feel that oneness? And when you feel the oneness and you realize everything is connected, that's the expanse that he is talking about. That's the ability to feel and perceive things extrasensory, beyond your physical, and have that come back to you.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about remote viewing and get into that practice.
Yeah.
And he's got 9 steps on that. But really what he wants us to discover from what I'm seeing is that there's a flow of a loving awareness that's there for us if we can just be quiet and peaceful.
That's correct.
Like you said with the meditation.
With meditation.
And then that judgment coming up.
Yeah, the judgment will come up. You self-judge, and then you begin to let it go. You let the flow come in, right? You begin to feel that peace. And then you begin to feel the emotion, the senses that you haven't felt before because you become more sensitive. Love is not love like, oh, I love you. This is a Valentine's Day sort of thing, like you're my wife, my boo, whatever the hell people call it. Love is a function of understanding. That's what love is. When they talk about love, even in the old Vedic scripts, it's not love like, oh, I'm passionate about you. It's no, I understand that there's no difference between you and I. That's what love is.
Right.
Right? Understanding transcends space and time. That's the love. And he said, finding that, whether it be through remote viewing or finding that quietness, that quiet space inside of us, allows us to tap into that expanse, to feel more, to be more sensitive to what we really were.
Yeah, and I think it's important, on the Christianity side of things, Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians, and we use it for weddings, love is patient, love is kind.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he says is, at the end is, love holds no wrong.
How could it?
Yes.
No, seriously, I mean, you could give me an example where love holds wrong. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because if you truly, Jason, if I truly understand who you are, the way you think and what you do, no wrong can happen between us.
Right.
I'm not going to do something to maliciously hurt you or be, malevolent, right?
Right.
Or to do like a lower density sort of act. I can now elevate myself and my understanding of me and you and how we interact in this world, right?
And I think understanding, because there's going to be a lot in this book that was kind of heavy. Alex, you having a scientific mind was really good in that. So for me, having more of a practical side of things, that's why I love us doing the podcast together. But at the end of the day, I want people to understand this is a person that was a rocket scientist.
Yes.
A laser
physicist.
Yep. Yes, physicist. And he says at the end, he was just trying to figure himself out.
Isn't that amazing?
That's all of us, though.
What is he doing? He's on a journey spiritually to find these answers in what?
Right.
Because he wants to understand himself better. And in doing so, he has found a tool. He's found something that we all share.
Right.
And now he's giving that to all of us. He's gone through the struggle. He's made the choice. He's made the hard journey.
Right.
So that now we can benefit from it. That is an elevation. That is a higher way of thinking. That is what brings us all up.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That is a sense of love, heart center, and growth that we can all agree and emotionally attach to.
And he gets heavily into, because I want to get real practical right now, and we're going to get logical and practical, and I think this is important if we're going to do justice to the book. He gets heavily into remote viewing.
Yes.
So would you describe to everybody what remote viewing is?
Yeah, great.
And then I'll get into the 4 proven applications he has of it.
Yeah. So, people ask you like, oh, what items would you bring onto a remote island, right? Would you bring food? What would you bring with you if you're going to be stuck in a remote place? What is remote? Something that's isolated.
Right.
Something you can't see, something where nothing is around, right? It's being able to view something outside of what your current perception is, right? So it's a remote, so something way far away, and I'm going to view it internally with my mind's eye. The process of remote viewing is where someone can calm the mind, calm their senses, and they can let the diaphanous images of the mind's eye, and diaphanous means, here I can explain this. You ever got your picture taken, Jason?
Mm-hmm.
Or any of these other listeners? And you know that flash that happens that bleaches the rods in your eye, and you're like,
right.
I got this blue, green thing, whatever it might be?
Mm-hmm.
When you close your eyes in the psychic space, you have a diaphanous image, and a diaphanous is a fuzzy kind of outlined image, right? Lacks some clarity, but has a shape and a form to it.
Right.
That you can somewhat associate with. So in remote viewing, what they do is they quiet the individual and they ask them questions that are not leading, but questions of description, because they don't know what this object or place or person or thing might be. So you ask how they feel. How big is it? Is it cool to the touch? Is it hot? What's the texture like? Is it bright outside? Is it dark? Am I underground? Is it damp? Descriptive questions, right? And in doing so, you begin to build a picture. And this diaphanous image, these images that flood into the mind's eye that these extrasensory people start to pick up on, they can be like, okay, I am now starting to pull together an image of something. I'm not sure quite what it is, but let me give you these pieces of it. And to them, it looks like that flash when someone takes a camera and takes your picture and it bleaches your eyes. So imagine keeping that image closed in your head, but that takes shape or that takes form. That is what the remote viewing is. So it allows individuals in this psychic space to look beyond their current locale and see, okay, something or some image or some feeling or texture or taste is happening outside of what's physically happening here. That is a remote view.
No, I love that. Yeah.
All right. I hope that makes sense.
No. That makes sense because when he gets into it, he gets into because a lot of people are saying, so remote viewing or meditation. I saw that in the book. There was this, like back and forth. If I can do meditation and get into this peaceful state, then why do I need to get into remote viewing? But we have to understand different people are in different processes, and the way that they can understand things.
That's correct.
Is different. Somebody may be able to, like for me, remote viewing sounded more interesting to me because at the end of the day, I think I have probably more psychic ability.
Sure.
And so I could feel like that's more tangible after I read the book. And I encourage everybody to read the book. After I read the book, I feel like that's more tangible for me than meditation.
Sure. And no, that's right. And I I really took to it too because it has a nice background of physics and a scientific basics. So, and I'm like, again, I'm comfortable with that, right? So now that I can apply, I can make that easy step from, okay, I'm looking at physics, a well-backed background, right? I'm looking at this gentleman, his history. I now might be willing to take that step because I'm a little bit more comfortable. And this is a comfortable step for helping people understand their consciousness and who they are, right? But they can still look at, okay, here's my scientific box of a world.
Right.
And now I'm going to open up the top of that box. I'm not going to step out of it, but I'm going to see that other things are possible, but I can still use the comfort and understanding of what I do and how I currently perceive the world. So meditation, not by it, but we're all coming to the same end goal, right?
Right.
And remote viewing has a process to it, right? There's a step-by-step process. And this isn't for just one person. And he's found through the research that there aren't just special people. Everybody has this ability, right? And with muscles, if we don't use our muscles, we lose them.
Right.
The interesting part about consciousness that when you begin to remote view and learn how to do it, and you don't do it for a while, you don't lose that learning. The more you do it, the better you get with no downfall or lessening like you would have in like muscle weakness from not working out. Right?
Well, it's funny, different cultures too. Like he was talking about Scandinavian countries and how this is pretty common practice.
Yeah.
So when you look at that and then you see their culture and then you turn around and see their community, you turn around and see their government, some people are saying that's the happiest place to live in the world. So, but that's a pretty common, like he could go and give a lecture there.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be considered foo-foo.
No, there are already points in their cultural understanding of people that are willing to accept.
Right.
Not immediately put it in a box. There's an openness to it, right? So if they're a close-knit community, right, if they're a tight group, a nationality, they're more willing to listen and understand from others in their group because they feel a common thread between one another. So it would make sense that when you go to these places, they're more apt to listen to it. Right. But here in the United States, what it is, identity, ego, me, I'm different, this is me. When realize we haven't gotten to the point where, hey, there is something that connects all of us, right?
Yeah, and the self-realization part that I kept hammering to myself over and over again, and what you just said was, and he talks about this, and this is probably the most important statement I got in the whole book.
Drop the hammer on me.
He said this. This hit me more than anything. He said, "We are the love we seek."
Excellent.
And I kept thinking about that over and over and over again.
What did you take from it?
We are the love we seek. So the amount of awareness that I have, whether it's through meditation or whatever type of spiritual practice that I use, inside of me is everything that I have that I need to be whole.
Right on the button.
So me looking, and we talked about this earlier, and I don't want to get into that, but me looking for anything external for love, or me looking for anything external to appease me emotionally.
Yeah.
I mean, because that really hit me really hard, because it was like probably 2 weeks ago, because you gave me the book, and I probably had it for 3 weeks, but 2 weeks ago I was reading it, and that was something. It's like, so then I like self-realization, I began to look at it and say, what are things that I'm seeking externally?
Right.
Personally. And I have to write shit down. So
you have to remember. You got to document.
Okay, my ego likes to be stroked by the opposite sex.
Sure.
Flirting makes me feel like I'm somebody.
Okay.
And then so I just began to write things out. What do I feel less than where I don't feel loved? So I had 2 columns. I had things that make me feel like I'm loved externally and things that I feel less love externally.
Interesting.
I don't know. That's just for me. And so I began to write all these things out, and it was interesting how I came up with, of course, we always come up with more negative than we do positive.
Shame on us.
Shame on us.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was like, this is self-realization. Now I'm beginning to, I don't know if you use the word enlighten or whatever, but now I'm beginning to see the things that are faults. Because when I went through each one of them on both sides, yes, they were all external, but they were so ego-driven to the point that it was almost, I began to laugh at them.
Right. Because you're like, this is frankly,
so stupid.
This is stupid. I'm not loving and respecting myself properly, and I'm trying to fill these gaps on the other side, which are outweighing all the good that's actually happening.
Right.
And when he says, that love that you're seeking, is actually found internally in that volume,
right?
It's because, Jason, there is no me and you. It's self and other self.
Right.
It's a reflexive property. It's a holographic universe.
Do you realize how liberating this is, though?
No, that's what I mean. It should feel good. It should feel
because
good.
At the end of the day, it's like, fuck all this.
Yeah, no,
like
exactly.
The whole list, my whole life.
Yeah.
Of everything externally that I've been looking for in my life to justify who I am as a person.
Yeah.
I could wad that up and say, okay, that's gone. It's in me. Now the focus becomes, what do I need to do? And then the book begins to take a hold.
Jason, who the hell were you trying to justify it for?
But if you don't get to that point, after like chapter 3, the book is not going to make sense to you.
It won't make sense.
No.
You need to take the steps in that journey.
Right.
Right? You are not trying to justify yourself to anyone else.
Right.
You want to put it on someone else because you don't take the time to, or have the balls, okay, male or female, I don't care, it's a metaphor.
Right.
To look at yourself and truly understand who you are, what you want, and what you seek, right? That internal love, to love and accept yourself for who you are. You will never be able to accept the outside world and other people.
Right.
Right? You will not be able to accept the fact that it is just me and a reflection of me, okay? So if I treat someone poorly, I'm going to get the reflexive property of someone else treating that poorly back to me. So you need to find that love, and you can't make that next step. You cannot take that next chapter of your life and begin reading it until you've fully understood the current chapter you're on.
And that leads me perfectly right into what he says. He says this. This is so beautiful. He says, becoming aware of awareness itself, because that is where the boundless self awaits discovery.
Correct.
So, for me...
How does it make you feel? Tell me.
No. I mean, it was like... It made everything... Even though it's like a real heavy book, physics, we can get into that. You know, we can use... At the end of the day, really basic.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, really basic. It's me being aware of what's inside of me and how do I get there.
Correct. And
so... It was almost, which is funny because he's a laser scientist, but it's almost like he pinpointed a laser and said, "This is where you need to focus on."
Isn't that amazing? So finite and accurate, right? And
yes, yeah. It's like, forget everything else. You've been shotgunning all these approaches. You've been shotgunning. You don't need to go and kneel before a statue. You don't need to go into a church and have an experiment.
You don't.
You. It is inside of you.
Everything you need is here.
Yes, and it reminded me, like with Christ conscious, or Jesus said that over and over again. He's like against religion and dogma, and he goes, Christ is in you, God is in you.
When you say, Jason, when you say things like that, it erodes a power structure that's in place.
Right.
It takes what control, a perception of control or authority you were giving to someone.
Right.
That they really have no control over you, but you're handing it to them. And you're not taking that back.
It's like I talked to somebody the other day, and she was so excited that her granddaughter had been baptized. And so she was going to be, forever changed. And I'm like, I see so many people that have been baptized or saved or whatever terminology you want to use, enlightened. We can use that word. People go to India and have all these trips. And it's still external.
Every time. Think
about that.
They're looking for the external thing to change them internally. When they don't realize
this guru that's going to change
it's
my
not
life,
it.
And I'm going to spend 2 years with this guru and sit underneath their feet and spend $100,000. Or, we talked about this earlier. Yeah. Me, I ventured into Scientology for a little bit. We're going to have a whole discussion on that.
Right.
It's external, all of it,
everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at it, and it's Socratic. And and this is how I say it. No matter how external something is or people pressing their opinions on you, it is only at that moment when you internalize it, when you come to the consensus within yourself, does that change happen. So stop looking outside for something and go right to the real point you're trying to get at, which is the internal reflection, and finding that love.
And I feel that's the book.
That is the book.
And I think that's what he was saying through it. We can get into, and we're going to get into psychic experiences. But if you look at the book in that way...
Remote viewing is a byproduct.
Right.
You're right.
Remote viewing, meditation, psychic experience, which I thought was interesting, to get back to the book. He said more than half the U.S. population, with the Gallup poll, more than half the U.S. population had a psychic experience.
Of course.
So I know I've had multiple, and I know you've
I've had way too. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this. Are you kidding me? It wouldn't drive us to talk about something we actually, we firmly believe in, we want to share.
But it's so funny how we look at it and we label it a mystic experience.
Is it really? No, but is it really mystic?
Is it reality?
But we all share in this common thread, right? So if someone has a dream and it scares them, even if the dream may not be true, the experience someone has is true to them. You know what I mean? That emotion, whether or not it has any physical or logical or fundamental or factual basis, it doesn't matter.
Right.
If the person perceives that as the truth, that is how they're going to feel. That is going to have an emotional impact on that individual.
But I think when he gets into ESP, and he gets into it pretty heavily, and he talks about, people are trying to compare it with mystical experiences, he gets into it in a scientific way, like you said, that it happens on an edge, and we look at it as limiting, but it's really not, and it's a border of new worlds.
That's correct.
And what I like about it is he says, he gets into, so he's like, okay, we can take it as esoteric as we want, as generic as we want, but in reality, there's two, and this is what he gets into, there's two ESP processes that we can take into consideration. With remote viewing is one.
Yeah.
And distant healing is the other.
Yeah.
And they're based on opposite intentions, which I like. I like how he explained this.
That's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, because he says the first one brings us information. Right. Remote viewing is bringing, because that's what we're asking for, to heal ourselves. Right. Because it's in us.
Yeah.
So we have the first one bringing information to us. Then, and I'm wondering if we get to a level where, and I don't like to use the word levels too, but I'm wondering if we get to such a level of love, unconditional love, that as we begin healing ourselves, we would have a natural desire to heal others. And then that would bring us to directing that same energy outward.
That's like an altruistic energy, right?
Right. And that's the healing.
That's the healing.
To us and others.
And it's funny, doesn't helping someone else also make you feel good?
Mm-hmm.
That's not an egotistical thing. That's an altruistic thing. That is where you see the benefit that doing something good has twice the amount of power and benefit than doing something that's only for the ego, which only benefits one.
But think about it. We can give money to the homeless guy when we're waiting in line at traffic, and we get $5 and we feel good, but then we go to work and our energy sucks. Yeah. And we're yelling and screaming at everyone. I mean, really,
what the hell is going on in your work day? Yeah.
But really think about it, because if we're here to help others and to generate love and to show love, and we can get into vibration, and we're going to talk about that in another podcast.
Yeah. I
want to have a whole podcast on vibration.
That's key.
But what have we done? You know what I mean? Like, in the sense of, and I think he explains that really, really well, because he talks about that we have to ride on the edge. And I love that statement.
It's awesome.
Because when he's saying right on the edge, there's another part of him that a lot of people don't know about, is that he's almost blind.
Isn't that amazing?
He lives in, I think he lives in New York now, but he lived in Silicon Valley for a while when he was blind.
The blind man can see.
And he had motorcycles.
Yes.
And he loved motorcycles.
Yeah.
And he would trick the DMV. He even wrote about this in a paper. He would trick the DMV so that he could get his license.
At least he's honest about it,
you know? He wrote about this in a paper. And so he would ride around being totally blind on a motorcycle in the Silicon Valley.
Oh, my God. Hopefully
and never get in an accident or anything.
On a one-off road or something. You know what I mean?
But, I mean, he had that ability to be able to do that. But at the end of the day, to ride on the edge.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that alone could be like a podcast name or something like that.
Remember how we were talking about the Joker tarot? Mm-hmm. How was a man stepping off the edge of the cliff?
Right.
It's on that edge. That's where we find the things outside of what's going on. What that uncomfortable is understanding that expanse beyond the physical, right? When you step from the physical into the vacuum, into the thing that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and he talks about settling yourself into the moment, settling yourself into the now.
Yeah.
Settling yourself into stillness. And then he has this thing that eventually, and I think, especially here in the United States, like right now, he talks about these two words, and they were key for me. You know, like, and because you asked me like what I got out of the book.
Yeah, I want to know what's impactful.
He talks about this mental quietness.
Right.
And I was like, oh, how do I get there?
How do you find that peace?
Right.
Right.
It's in me.
It's
in me. It's not externally.
No.
Got that.
That's an internal thing.
So how do I get that mental quietness?
Right. And so that's either through a practice of remote viewing, or that's through a practice of meditation. Right. So meditation is finding that stillness inside of you. That is letting the thoughts that come through when you're thinking, you're like, oh my God, I can't quiet my mind, is to let those things come and pass. Do not attach them to yourselves or attach an ego or perspective to it. Let the thought come. Don't put a label on it as good or bad. Right. Just let them flow through you until those thoughts begin to cease. And then at that moment, you find the stillness and you begin to feel those things inside of you and outside of you, right?
Which the outside part, he talks about unseen layers of reality.
That's correct. And remember how we talked about there's a lot of the vacuum that can't be seen, but it holds all that energy, right?
Right.
How do we use that energy? How do we use those unseen layers? And it's funny they call it reality, right? Because it's something that is non-real, right? It's something that sits outside of how we understand our physical world and gravity and how time should work. And that's an important part of finding that stillness. So how that resonates with you is key, and that is either found through meditation or using this 8 or 9 steps that he has, right? Mm-hmm. To move yourself to increase your practice of remote viewing, so that we can all come together to find the same ends. We all meet at that same focal point, which is understanding that oneness within ourselves.
Yeah, and a word that he used that helped me understand the concept of it was non-locality.
Non-locality.
And so I began to look at that, and I was like, okay, that sounds really deep. What is that? But it's what he talks about is it's possible for our awareness, and I'm reading from the book, it's possible for our awareness to access this information in space and time where everything is connected to everything else.
Thank you.
And that's the premise of our podcast.
Yeah, that's great. And let's taper this back for a second here. If you look at the New England Journal of Medicine and the current philosophy that doctors are using, which I find is frankly absurd when there's plenty of evidence here to the contrary, is that consciousness is created by the mind. Okay? That your physical body, when you are born, when that energy, that bioelectric energy mixes with the salts and the other aminos and it fires your nerve receptors, that it creates your consciousness, your thought forms. What they found is through the research funded by the CIA, NASA, the United States military, the rest of the military-industrial complex, is that they proved beyond a reasonable doubt that consciousness exists outside of the body.
And he said, this is what I thought was funny, because he said it over and over again, not to interrupt you, Alex, but he said, the government actually paid for me to become spiritually enlightened.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Is that the most
about it over and over
absurd thing? And he probably gets a kick out of it, right?
Yeah, that's what he does. It was almost like a comedic.
Right. And so we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into researching consciousness, right? And how to use it for some sort of benefit for our own understanding. Mm-hmm. And they've shown that consciousness exists outside the physical body, yet our current medical practice will not look at this information that is public and available, right? To say that, oh, the brain does not create that consciousness, right?
Right.
That consciousness actually creates the thoughts in the brain. So that if you have consciousness stuck in the brain, that means you're stuck in the physical. But this is proving and showing otherwise, that beyond a reasonable doubt, that consciousness can exist outside of that physical realm, that it can move irrespective of time and space.
Yes, and he talked about it because, and this is so funny, we're going back and forth perfectly. He talked about it as being tapped into this totality. He talked about the shared conscious, the collective conscious, and then a common awareness.
That's correct.
Which is what you're sharing. And what I want us to know is when we internally begin to look like this, and we begin to tap into this shared conscious, this collective conscious, and this common awareness that we all have, he says we get to experience. Those are the key words. We get to experience.
It's not handed to you. You choose to experience that.
But this is something that scares me, but is intriguing to me at the same time. Like where we're standing on the cliff.
Right.
The Joker's standing on the cliff because he says we get to experience unknown dimensions of the universe.
Absolutely. Right? Because this whole time we've been so concerned with what we can see. Time and space.
We're concerned. We're obsessed with that.
We're concerned about when we're going to die, and what they're finding through this research and remote viewing is that the body may die, but the consciousness, which doesn't run on an electrical field, right, that we currently have in our body, exists beyond the physical body. So even if you were to die, that moves somewhere, right? So that feeling, that choice, there's a dimension above the one we currently live in.
Right.
So we need to reflect and take those steps from the physical, right? Walk to the edge of that cliff, understand that it's going to be emotionally uncomfortable for us, but we begin to learn and feel that oneness beyond what we currently are.
But that oneness is what's universal and what's timeless. Space and time, what he talks about is just, he says it's just a human perception.
That's correct. So let's look at this. We look in the mirror, okay? It would be because we see the change in ourselves. As we grow older, our hair turns gray. If you're a guy or a girl, it's unfortunate for you. If you're a woman, you start growing a beard.
Right.
I don't know, but we begin to age.
Right.
It's our perception and understanding time and change, right? So in this physical world, it'd be very difficult for us to not have some sort of measurement because our physical minds are trying to understand the changes that actually happen. And if we operated only on consciousness, right, when you look in the mirror, you'd begin to realize that you are actually ageless.
Right.
Which means you expand beyond time because that is a perception you have to help you understand this 3 dimensions around you. But the consciousness works in a dimension above that, a dimension that's not bound by this physical thing that you see. It does not age. It's an energy that is forever. It's an energy that can understand. It can move forward, backwards, or sideways in time. And it's non-locality, right? It's connectedness above us, right? If we're like a radio antenna receiving this information from our consciousness, we are taking that information, pulling it down into our 3D world. We're taking something from what they would call a time-space, the non-physical, and moving it down into space-time, which is our physical.
Well, he even talks about, he gets into quantum theory, and the fundamental notion in quantum theory, he says, is quantum interconnectedness.
Didn't we talk about this?
Yes.
The morphogenetic field with the dogs, the red, the blue, and the green, atomic particles, irrespective of distance. These things happen, right, in the physical. But there are non-physical applications to it. So you have to look at these rules that we abide by in our physical realm, right? Our perspective of reality really is truly governed by something non-physical. And it's uncomfortable for a lot of us to accept that because it's something we can't see, we can't feel or taste. It's intangible. It's something that we don't have control over.
Right.
I can control this situation between our physical. I can choose to leave this radio show right now. But I can't lose the fact that you and I have connected our energies, our consciousness, right? So letting that go, being in that flow, finding that silence, that meditative state, or doing that remote viewing gets you to that point. That's riding along the edge. That's being the Joker on that tarot card, stepping onto nothingness.
Yeah, and he sums it up in this chapter, and he says, in other words, the ordering in macrocosm is reflected in microcosm.
Absolutely. So what happens in the greater view of our universe is a function of what happens internally inside of us, our microcosm, our own little universe.
So all these Instagram posts, because I want to put it where we can understand it.
Drop the hammer.
All these, the universe, and we have, the source, the universe, and I can go through on my Instagram, and I guarantee you I'll run through 10 at least.
Yeah.
Waiting on the universe, this, the universe, that, the universe, that. This is what you're talking about.
This is what we're talking about. The only person you're really waiting on is yourself. Are you going to get to that point? Are you going to sit down, buckle up, and realize I'm the person that needs to make that change internally? Am I okay with being uncomfortable? Am I okay with moving into a realm that I didn't truly know about, but I'm willing to take those steps to grow who I am spiritually, to understand that my consciousness survives outside of the physical, that there is more to me than just my birth and my death, right? That the energy I create and what I feel lives beyond space and time.
I love that.
What I am as physical is actually holographic and infinite, that I am connected, that all is actually one. And how do we get to that point?
And he goes into that, speaking of being a hologram, like the universe being a hologram. There's a physicist by the name of David Bohm, B-O-H-M. Yeah. And he talked about it being a hologram. And he says that the unity of the perspective consciousness, which by focusing on one area can actually reach the information contained by each point of the whole hologram.
That's correct.
So when I'm saying universe, and I'm saying I'm, waiting on the universe to give me abundance or whatever, and I'm looking at the universe as being a hologram, what am I seeing?
You are looking at the piece of you, and you're waiting for that thought energy that you had to make its way through and bring that energy back to you, right?
And so we could say, because some people question whether is the universe God or where.
Does it matter?
We want to use the word God, he, she, pronouns.
You go with
it, yeah.
Right. So if we've learned anything from this podcast so far, is that there's a collectiveness to it.
Mm-hmm.
This is obvious in the scientific study and proof that they have beyond chance and a reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a collective nature to it. So if everything is one, Jason, is everything not God? Are you not God within yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Are you not that light, that Christ consciousness, right, whatever you want to define or put it in a box as? If we're all interconnected, right, there's no defining difference between any of us, then what we decide is something else or a higher power is something that's actually internal. Yeah. So when you look at these, I'm sorry, but these abilities like extrasensory perception, and people might be, oh my God, that's, no pun intended, that is something beyond what I should be doing. That might be magical or mystical.
Right.
That's like a godlike power. Well, you're very right, because if everything is connected, it is all one, it is all consciousness. Doing those things is the ability we all have. We have these powers to do it inside, but we need to realize it and come to that point.
And I think that ties perfectly for those of you that are out there when there was experiences, out of body experiences, or whatever you want to call them, when you look in the Bible and you see Moses and God coming down.
Yeah.
And he had one thing, he said, I am.
I am. And then you ask, and then you say that yourself. In a recursive nature of things, right, or reflexive part, I am. And if he says I am, and then I'm repeating that, that's exactly correct. I am assumes that is an all-encompassing all. It's the all.
Exactly.
That's and if what I wanted to I am a piece of that all, a piece of that hologram, I also am the am. I am that greater whole. So there's no true difference between you and what you might perceive or call a God, right? Is that connected energy that we are all a part of. And it's about finding that.
And Eugene Wagner?
Wagner, yeah.
Yeah, Eugene Wagner talks about this. Nobel Peace Prize winner.
Yeah, there's some good vetted people in here. Keep it up.
Exactly.
Can we build some credibility on this?
Says the laws of quantum mechanics cannot be formulated without recourse to the concept of consciousness.
Well, they can't, because it's the non-locality of it, right? And then if you really want to study quantum mechanics, you have to study consciousness, right? You have to study how technology pairs with the human spirit. That's that sensitivity. That's finding that heart center, that oneness. Okay? It's understanding that if I act upon something here, it will affect something outside of my local realm.
So remote viewing scientifically is available because we can look at, there was another scientist named Minkowski.
Yes.
And he talks about space as a geometrical model.
Fantastic. I'm glad you brought that up.
With spatial coordinates.
Yeah. Yeah, spatial coordinates, right? So Minkowski used a very special thing, and we all learned this in our early stages of algebra. It was called the imaginary number. Right?
Right.
So
this is not Alice in Wonderland stuff.
Right. And we know that the shortest distance between two things is a straight line. Now, in a geometric, I'm going to try and round this out here. The hypotenuse of a triangle is going to bring point A to point B in the shortest distance.
Right.
Rather than go to C and then go back up to B, right, from A. Right? We're just going to go straight across. In a non-local geometric box, so if our box has a point in the dead center of it, a cube, and it's got these sticks that go through it, up and down, left and right, and across. All right? So imagine like you're supporting the walls of this box.
Right.
If we want to get from one area to the other, we have to create some sort of imaginary line. So Minkowski's principle, if I'm pronouncing his name right, was that when we use the imaginary number and we apply an imaginary value to the hypotenuse of something, that we can understand the non-locality of moving our consciousness from one space to another. That time is not real, because instead of saying, oh, we have to physically move back in time and move to this other point from point B to point A, we can move across this imaginary hypotenuse to actually shift ourselves to that point.
Yeah, he calls it a world line path.
A world line path. They're all connected, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't actually have to move anywhere because it's an imaginary distance. It doesn't actually exist. So essentially, it's always there, and it's just a matter of shifting yourself onto that line.
It's internally us shifting ourselves. And he talks about that. He said remote viewing occurs when awareness and target are not separate.
Correct. And our target is, okay, we need to be somewhere. Mm-hmm. So now how can I be aware of the place I want to be? I want to be rich in life. I want to feel good. I want to be married, right? I want to go to these places. This is the target, right? But do you bring yourself to that internal awareness to make the choices?
Right.
To let the information or the opportunities flow to you to get to that point where you consciously want to be?
And I want to bring it down in my terms because this is what I got out of it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm dropping
No, you're
stuff.
perfect.
Yeah.
I love it, and it helps me explain it on a scientific label. But the universe makes sense only as a unified consciousness.
Otherwise, it would not make sense.
You're right. And so when you make that statement to me, physical reality is but a separation.
Right.
So that leads...
Chosen by us.
Yes.
Right. And
so we have a choice to make.
We have a choice to make. Do we live in a world of our physical reality, which demands separation,
right,
which defies the actual laws of physics in our universe, or do we take the step and move with how the universe actually works into the non-physical, the things that actually verify and make the physical laws of our universe operate? Okay, these non-physical things. We can choose to be in the physical and defy what really happens in nature, or we can move to the non-physical and move with the nature of what is actually created.
But this was what was beautiful with me when I began to look at this, because spiritual traditions, religions, down through the centuries, their whole main premise is one thing. I mean, think about it. I mean, whenever you look at that, it's to become one with some higher order, being, consciousness, universe, whatever it is. That's what has been happening. Mankind has been struggling with this for centuries, since the beginning of time,
with entangling themselves
right
with that higher level, right? Not to put things on a hierarchy, but is to vibrate higher, to find a density beyond the ones we are at, to move at a pace and to connect with something greater than ourselves.
Right.
Right? Don't we every single day, like, people want money and they want to buy more because they want to become a greater image of themselves?
Right.
Well, you're sticking yourself more in the physical, right? You're already self-limiting. Now, if you move to something that's not bound by space or time and connecting with that, now that is something that really elevates yourself.
Yeah, it was so interesting when I was in the Amish communities in Missouri. It was very interesting. They would not let you allow them to take pictures of them.
Okay.
Because they didn't want any graven images.
Yeah, they're really good at making chicken coops and, like, doing roofs, too. Yeah, spent some time in Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Yeah, you spent time in Pennsylvania.
A couple Rumspringers I've had.
Which they said with the rapid growth of them having 7, 8 kids, and then them socialistically putting their money together and purchasing the amount of property that they're going, we're pretty much going to have monster Amish communities, national parks.
Sorry, monster
mega cities.
Amish. I'm sorry, monster Amish. Yeah,
monster Amish.
Yeah, that's what happened. So you remember how with monocropping? Okay, we look at all of our crops. What do? Corn, soy, wheat.
Right.
Super farms.
Right.
Why won't that happen with communities? Right. It's a pooling of resources to do something at a greater level.
Right.
Is it not?
Yes.
So the Amish are just doing the same damn thing that happened with corn.
Yeah, and you had mentioned, because we have the Hindu, the Atman, Atman, and then we have the, you had talked about it earlier, the tradition of the Vedic.
Yeah, the Vedic scripts.
Yeah, the Vedic scripts. And each of them, because I want to put this, and then we have the Judeo-Christian traditions, teachings. So that's pretty much sums up majority of the world.
Right.
I would say probably 70% of the world.
That's a fat number.
So in the Vedic tradition, the human attachments are consequences of such a way of judging things in contrast, and that's the cause of all suffering, which we talked about that earlier.
It's the contrast. Unpack that. What is contrast? That's saying there's a separation between me and you, right?
There's an illusion of separation.
Thank you very much. There is an illusion.
That's a key word. I want everybody to get that. It's an illusion of separation.
Right. We create that separation.
If we have a collective consciousness,
we're always connected, right?
We're always connected. So if we are separating from that, that's an illusion.
That's an illusion because you can't separate from it.
Yeah, love that. And then the Hindu, the Atman, is they call it as the fragmented consciousness, and it aims at being one with the Brahman.
The Brahman, it's the greater consciousness.
Right, the greater consciousness,
okay? As we call now, holographic. Right? So you go back and you look at these Vedic Sanskrit, right?
Right.
The Sanskrit has their way of describing it 3,000 years ago, and this is how we're describing it now. And it's insane that we go through all these cycles to come to the same ideas that they currently came to.
And Judeo-Christian teachings recognize that spiritual connection with God who dwells in every individual and everything.
So if you're trying to connect with God, right?
Right.
And God is a part of all of us, we embody the peace of Christ, right? If you're taking the Eucharist.
Right.
What are you saying? You're already accepting the fact that there's an interconnectedness between all of us. Do not deny that, but you're putting the illusion in place that we are disconnected, that we are separate, right? So for you to say that, oh, these other dogmas are not true, or this scientific material is false, well, then that's you saying that your own religion might be false.
Yes, because at the end of the day, and he sums this up really good, is that it's a spiritual awakening. And he talks about this. He says, one can be awakened by a transmission of grace from a teacher, meditation, but there's another means that he's trying to get out there in the book, and it's experiencing a state of self-knowing of spaciousness.
Awesome.
And I love that where he's talking about, because he takes it from, like you had said, from a scientific realm, and he says, well, let's question this. We're on the edge of reality. We're sitting here, we're writing that, we're on that cliff, and you have the potential to be able to have, if you want to say, your own spiritual awakening. I don't know if that's the proper terminology or not.
That's correct, yeah.
But to get to a point to where he says that the realization at the end, at the end of this, he says the realization is that the common substance is nothing else but love.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that binds it all together. It's love, as we described before, understanding.
And he says to become self-realized is to know God, and God is love.
Right. That's what it is. It's just the great understanding of all this information that comes to us. Thanks for closing the chapter to that book. I mean, I got goosebumps right now.
So what I like in the next chapter, what he talks about is... and this is very practical for me, and this is what helped me, and I want you to take it, from the scientific perspective and push this through. He says to learn how to live in the present time and space day by day with serenity and peacefulness. And in living our life here on earth, we tend to assign meaning only to what we experience here.
Yes, correct.
And so he says, biased how we are accumulated fear and anxiety. And we talked about that earlier. So if you're cut off voluntarily from the collective consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it,
elusively saying that,
right, and you're not living in serenity and peacefulness, you are only assigning meaning through your ego, to things that are here and now that you physically see, whether it's science, whatever it may be. The emotion that you feel when your loved one leaves you, your husband or your partner leaves you, then you become biased, and that accumulation begins to cause these dysfunctions mentally in our lives.
Well, that's right, because you're spiraling down a finite path, and that's a path of limited perspective, right?
So whenever I go to a psychologist, because I talked to someone last night that said they have some disorder. It's not bipolar. It was some other. I have it on my phone because I actually looked it up. And then I'm going to someone else, and they're trying to go through my childhood and explain it all.
Yeah.
We're still going off of a bias.
Right out of the gate. Like out of the gate. So what are we going to start with? You're going to put me in a room that only has one way out.
Right.
Okay? Rather than an infinite amount of possibilities coming out of it. So that perspective, that disconnect, that choice to remove ourselves from the unlimited potential that we have and put it into a limited world can only give us so many possibilities of thought. So if you start on a basis of poor thought and limited possibility, what are you stuck with? A very finite outcome, right? Rather than if you move to a world that has unlimited potential and many doors and avenues, which is not a square but a circle, you can choose any angle you wish to leave on. Right?
And I know he harps on remote viewing, and I'm trying to make this so it's not so that people can understand this. But if we're receiving information, in remote viewing, and our brain is using and he talks about this, a non-analytical cognitive style.
That's correct.
Where holistic processing is predominant, then we're going to have a psychic function. Now we're getting into the foo-foo stuff that people would automatically like they're shutting us off right now.
Yeah, they're like, okay, Stonewall.
Yeah. But he says there's a guy that he worked with called Ingo Swann.
One of the most fantastic remote viewers ever to grace the planet. And he helped design the methodology for remote viewing.
And he says in that there's these analytical mental limits that we begin to put onto ourselves. And I can see that when I was reading the book, I could see that. I could say, okay, what is the analytical mental limits? Because I like those 3 words, and I had to stop. This book, you need to you almost need to, you can't just read it straight through.
No, it requires digestion.
Yes, it requires digestion. And that was something with me where I was looking at it is analytical reasoning, remote viewing. I can look at it and dismiss it right off the bat. Because I'm looking at it and saying, and I don't want to use the word, I mean, you used it before and we've been using it, but foo-foo, but I can look at it and saying, what am I putting it through? Because I have images that will come to me that are fragmented.
Yes.
Which you talked about that earlier. I have emotional sensations.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've all experienced dimensional or functional descriptions that we can't understand. And he mentioned a guy by the name of Rene Warcaller, and he has a book called Mind to Mind. And he says this, he says it calls the lack of fusion effect or parallelism between parts of the target. So I was like, okay, I'm confused there. So I began to look at that and I was saying, I like to look at it this way, and this helped me out. And I've heard this before, and I want to share this, and I want you to explain after. So if I'm sitting on the sidewalk and it's Macy's Parade, Thanksgiving Macy's Parade.
A lot of balloons.
A lot of balloons, big balloons, right?
Big ones.
Yeah, it's Macy's Parade.
A lot of high school bands.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking, and I'm on the street level.
Yeah.
And I'm looking, and I see a balloon come before me, a float come before me, a high school band come before me, and I can only perceive it being on the street, what I'm seeing.
Yes. If
I'm in a helicopter above...
nice metaphor. Very nice transition.
What am I seeing?
The entire parade.
Right. So go ahead.
You receive the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
So when you apply the analytics of something, when you analyze something, you must put it through a filter, a perspective which you understand, right? So you need to run it through something so that, okay, any variances in this, I can then unpack and look at the details of it. But what they're saying is that with Ingo Swann, or the mind to mind, is that we're looking at a holistic picture. Do not analyze the images that come in and try to say, this is what it is. No. Just outright describe to me what you are seeing and feeling as a total picture rather than putting a label on it immediately.
And that label, he puts it in here. He says it's mental noise.
It's mental noise.
And it's created by memory, imagination, and analysis.
Correct. Put those things behind. Right. Let those thoughts pass through and then move into the things that seem awkward and random. Because what is random in that world is the actual truth. It is the holistic helicopter picture of that parade, right? But the memory, the perspective and the analytics that we were looking at, that's you sitting on the sidewalk looking at the balloon, right?
And what I liked about it when he said, when you begin to realize this and you're sitting there, but the word that he used that I really, really liked, he said it was the unused part of our awareness.
Right.
The unused.
It's unused.
I really like that. That word brought it to me personally.
Well, can you want to tell me a little bit more why that came to you personally? Because it is unused.
He uses another word, the unused, and then he went right into conditional awareness.
Nice. Nice.
And so I was like, and he gets into he says the aim is to reduce and overcome the sources of such environmental signals. One gains access to their psychic nature when they learn to see the world without any conditioning.
Right.
I want to say that again. When you learn to see the world without any conditioning, he says when they use direct perception, and then he says Buddhist teachings call it naked awareness.
That's correct.
In PSI research, it is called remote viewing.
Thank you. We've grown up throughout our lives, and we've been told how we should view things, how we should solve problems, how the physics of things works. And we abide by these rules, right? And then when we see things that seem to dumbfound us, or they're a spiritual experience or something that's out of body, they don't apply to those rules of what we've put the fundamental basis of our life and our religion on.
Right.
So to come to that naked awareness is to say that, okay, these people that taught me don't have all the answers. They only know what they know best. And they're out trying to help, right? But this is the society and the consciousness that we've chosen.
Right.
But to have a naked awareness is to say, I'm going to strip away all these dogmas and ideas and how I should perceive the world and just let them come to me and let me feel that unclothed, right? Uncomfortable. Let these things that I'm not used to flow into me and just accept them for what they are rather than try to analyze it with what I already know. Because these things that are coming to me are outside of my perspective of reality.
Right. And this is flowing so good. He goes into, Russell Targ talks about, with practicing remote viewing, we love the 9 steps to this, 3, points to this. We love bullet points. We love outlines. So he actually did that for us.
Yeah.
And he gives us 9 steps to describe and practice remote viewing.
Let's walk the audience through it.
And so, we're going to get real practical now. This is something that you can grab a hold of that you can be able to do yourself. Yeah. Have somebody choose an object to be the target.
Anything. Can we be clear that it's absolutely anything? I don't care if it's a GPS coordinate randomly on a map.
Right.
I don't care if it's a paper clip, a photograph, a coffee cup. Okay, go ahead.
He says, relax and give the first impressions about the target.
Okay. So I've chosen something, Jason, but I haven't shared it with you. Mm-hmm. Tell me what you begin to see. I don't want you to guess about it. Just let images flow to you.
Just let images?
Yeah.
I see like a child.
Well, hold on a second. I haven't chosen something, You know what I mean? But yeah, these are the steps. All right, so what's our next step?
Oh, that's funny. I begin to see like this fake pottery that children make that are like a dinosaur.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah.
Like that,
so,
that clay stuff, and you kind of
and then where kids make it.
You don't bake it, it just gets hard with air. You know what
exactly.
I mean?
To be, so he said, somebody choose an object to be the target. That's number 1. Relax and give the first impressions about the target. That's number 2. Describe mental pictures by writing them down. Number 3.
That's correct.
Do sketches.
Yeah.
Take a break. Look again into your inner imaginary about the target and give more of the picture, which you had talked about earlier.
Yeah.
To get the descriptions or have somebody ask you questions.
That's correct.
Get that. Try to hold the target object in your mind. Summarize all things said. And he said, finally have the interviewers show you the object.
That's correct. So that last point, right? So you've gone through, you've let the diaphanous images come into your mind. You've gone through the descriptive words of taste, feel, temperature, texture, size. You've gone through these things, right? Now, and you begin to sketch these archetypes, okay? These kind of half-ass images that, like, I'll have a square, right, with something round or elongated, and it might be a microphone, all right? And then at the very end, we read off all of these things, and then we look at, okay, the archetypes I've drawn, the emotions I have felt, the descriptive words I've used. Jason, is that this object that I'm showing you here, the microphone? Yes, it is. And what that does for your consciousness is an immediate feedback and confirmation of the things you had felt, so that when you are in that psychic space, you know what to feel for. So you start to push away the noise, and you deal only with the things that are moving into you into that flow state.
And he says it's an interconnection with the larger environment.
That's correct. That's what it is.
Yeah, and I love that. And, for me, one of the things that he mentions that's really important as we're going to close soon, because I know we're 2.5 hours into this.
I think it's pretty good. People are going to be like, can we stop listening?
But one of the things that he mentions towards the end of the book is retrocausality.
Retrocausality?
Yeah, causality.
Yeah.
There you go. Dreams about real happenings in which the subject does not take part but dramatize them to include him or herself in. And he mentions in one of the podcasts I was listening to him on, and you can search for the author's name and you'll get a lot of podcasts. He mentions one time where he did not drive because he's blind. He's now, and he lives in New York City. But he had a dream early in the morning where the brakes didn't work in his son's brand new Chrysler car, a real fancy one that he bought.
Right.
And then he woke up and there was an incident that happened, in the world where a bunch of people had died because brakes didn't work on a tour bus.
But what did he do? He, in a retrocausal way, for him to understand and internalize this information he received in this realm, this non-physical realm, he had to take his consciousness, his perception of his physical body, and apply it in that dream to that space. Okay?
But they've proven, and he talks about this, and there's a ton of scientific study where they even know that a person's nervous system knows 3 to 5 seconds in advance when a disagreeable stimulus is going to happen. That's proven.
That's proven. Think about all the conversation. Remember we talking at the beginning of the podcast, you walk into a room and you're uncomfortable?
Right.
You can feel the energy right out of the gate. That's that connectedness, right? And that's our ability to perceive that faster than the speed of light. It's like, my God, something's already off here. Or you're driving to that place.
Right.
You know something bad's going to happen, but you're not even there yet.
Yes.
It's because the consciousness has moved itself to that point in space.
Right.
And you're taking a non-physical thing and you're feeling it right now.
Yeah, and I believe that's one of the things that he gets into. But he wants, in the last 2 chapters of the book, he wants to answer one of the most important questions we all have, and that is their life after death. So he gets into it, and he talks about intuitive medical diagnosis and distant healing.
Yes.
And so when you have intuitive medical diagnosis, he talks about remote viewing and how we deal with an inflow of energetic information. And then we get into, and this sounds really foo-foo, but we get into distant healing because that's the next step. And we had talked about that earlier. That's the next step. I'm receiving information.
Yeah.
So now how can I take that information and share it with love to others?
Let's make a bridge. You ready for this bridge? I have a thought, a remote thought, a feeling, and I want to transmit that feeling to you.
Right.
And it's a positive one. That makes you feel better, does it not?
Right.
So I have just emotionally healed you. Before we even talk about the scientific and cellular action that happens in that exchange between us and our consciousness, remote healing can happen like anything else, like both of our particles in space. I have a positive particle going to then change the charge of this other one.
Right.
So why is it to say that I can remote view but I can't remote heal someone? It would be hypocritical. It would deny the laws of these physics in the quantum realm that we are accepting beyond a reasonable doubt.
Well, and it's so interesting when he gets into this because he's describing the medical issues that we have, and it's very practical. He says it's an unbalanced organism.
Is it not?
Yes. And then he goes into saying that there's only 2 reasons with that. Be that the body system is dysfunctional. There's a body system that's dysfunctional, or there's a psychological cause that led to the problem.
Okay, can we
think about how simple that is?
Metaphor it for people too. That is simple, right? They're like, okay, so how do I practice that? How do I take what he was saying is that the system is out of balance?
Right.
Your body operates at what? 98.6 degrees, right? That is an equilibrium. The body wants to be at equilibrium, but we push it to points of non-equilibrium, right? We put it into a state of unbalance.
Right.
So this remote healing, and what he's talking about is moving the body back to that state of balance, of equilibrium, where it wants to be, what it knows best.
Because if it's tapped into the collective conscious, then it's going to have an eternity of healing properties that could come in. I mean, when you start really, really thinking about it, it changes your perspective. Yeah.
Everything. And then you realize when I feel good, everybody will start to feel good, how I perceive that world. And if I feel negative, or other groups feel negative, that's a lot of energy we're all connected with that I need to try and bring back into balance.
Yeah, and he went into, and we're gonna do. I want to do another whole new podcast on chakra systems.
Cool.
Because I feel like for sake of time, I don't want to get into it real heavily. But he went into chakra systems, and that introspective meditation can help people get in touch with their energies. And then we look at chakras, and we've all done that. We've all, I've gone on YouTube where they have the chakra things where you need to get in line with them.
Yeah, you got to align your chakras, let the flow and the kundalini come through.
Yes.
Right.
But being a remote viewer, when you become in touch, it's going to naturally align. Whether it's a God, the collective consciousness.
That's because you're moving yourself into those energies of alignment, right? You're moving yourself into that non-physical realm. In order for things to work, they have to align, right? My car is not going to drive straight if my front two tires are pointed in different directions. Will it not?
Right.
So no. In order for me to get that straight, to get to my end goal, I have to make sure these things are aligned. So to remote view, you have to make sure that those chakras are in alignment, that understanding of yourself.
Right. And that's what they were talking about, is to be able to scan that person's chakras.
Right.
And to be able to help that. Because we've known that psychic ability we've seen healings of that. There's been documented cases on that. And that we've had shamans, gurus, we've seen, even in the Judeo-Christian, we've seen healings.
Laying of hands.
Yes.
That's old. That is old as
Reiki,
time. Yeah, Reiki, all that.
Right. And so there are questions that he brought up, which I thought was good in this. And I feel like it's a mind. He talks about it being a mind-to-mind therapeutic connection. But could you imagine... This is where I got into it, because I began to think, could you imagine going to your doctor? And what approach would they have with this? So when you go to your doctor now, what happens? And then if the doctor...
I'll tell you what happens. He looks at me and he's like, are you fucking insane? That's what he says to me. You know what I mean?
No, but I mean, if you looked at it, is a doctor sitting there thinking, how can I tap into the wisdom that's eternal? How can I tap into all the healing powers that I have? And then how can I demonstrate that to every patient that walks into the room?
How do I demonstrate that love and understanding? How do I transmit what I understand of the universe?
Because there's an out of balance in body, mind,
and spirit. Right. It's a triad, right? How does a stool sits on 3 legs? You can't have a stool with 2 legs, you'll fall over.
Right.
Mind, body, spirit. Okay? So how would a doctor take that application of mind, body, and spirit to put the body back into its equilibrium, its balance, right? Right. And you find that a lot of our thoughts, the choices we make, like how we feel, defines the food we eat. Mm-hmm. Okay, and the food we eat puts our body out of balance.
It does.
So it all begins with a conscious thought. So if you...
It's that, when you have a shitty day, negative thoughts. Yeah. I talked about that the other day. That craving to have shitty, negative food.
Yeah, you're magnifying that energy rather than overcoming it with something positive, right? To put yourself into balance, but instead you choose to put yourself further out of balance. And that causes... disease, or what I like to call dis-ease, right?
Right.
You're not at ease with yourself. You've lost that equilibrium.
Right. I love that. And he talks about a scientist named Mesmer, who implied that psychological trauma can cause physical illness.
Of course.
Yeah. And I think that goes into it pretty heavily.
Having your heart broken. Mm-hmm. It causes you to keel over. You feel sick to your stomach.
You don't want to eat.
You don't want to eat.
You don't want to talk to other people.
No, you don't. Right? So that energy is not there, right? There's not that your DNA on a physical level the strands become more tight in the helix. Right? They don't become loose and flexible, they become rigid and finite. And that's not natural. It makes you sick, it makes you diseased.
Yeah, and I want to end it with this. He talks about the edge of the world. Again.
Is this back at our Joker card?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he says that there's an inflow and an outflow of energy information. Mm-hmm. And he said one can find pure awareness, which is love. And he says, and hence the meaning of life, which that's a pretty profound statement right there.
I got goosebumps.
And he said, God cannot be found outside, which once again, we talked about that.
God is just a word, everybody. Chill out. I mean, whatever you want to call it.
And he says a guy by the name of Joel Goldsmith puts it this way. God may be experienced as an activity in consciousness. And then he mentions Father Thomas Keating, Kenny Warner, and he says that the whole universe is the teaching of us in our awareness. And he said, I have turned from a rocket scientist into a human being.
That is phenomenal.
And when you think of it...
I hope that resonates with everyone like that just did with me.
Into a human being.
I can feel the joy in that journey.
Right.
Because I feel like every single day as I'm on this journey, I become more of that human being. And that makes me feel good. It makes me respect who I am and others, right? That spiritual freedom, that the thing that actually makes up who we are. And I can respect you and the things you feel and the journey you go through in that pain.
Right.
I can, Jason, in a homoerotic way, I can actually, I can love you for who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I can understand.
And that's what he talks about. He says a huge impediment in the flow of love through a whole being, mental and physical, is to feed oneself from past grievances and resentments. Healing of any sort, and I love this, cannot come if the mind is not still, relaxed, and open in the present moment.
In forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of karma.
So he says, therefore, forgiveness is an essential step on the path to love and healing.
Can we tell people that we're not teeing this up? Like, this is just me talking and I'm just feeling it out?
It is important for anybody to recognize when they are making wrong decisions. If we don't like what we are experiencing, the peace will not come unless we choose again.
Remember we talked about choice?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the final statement in the book is him, in a non-judgmental way, learning how to open his heart and to be able to live, enjoy love and compassion, and to escape suffering and achieve liberation.
Oh my God. Oh my! He says, Jason, I think you need a new tattoo.
He says this path passes through emptiness and compassion for the removal of the suffering, but there is a third path. And I love this too. He just has these great statements. It's like a third path. There's another podcast.
No, it's the triad. It's the Trinity. It's the triple step of Vishnu. Please go ahead.
And he says, but there is a third path where we can experience the truth of the heart as well as the truth of the universe. And that, when I read that, I was like, okay, blown away.
Yeah.
Done. Walking away. Mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop. Hold on. We got to take these off the hooks and just hit the floor.
That we can experience the truth of the heart as well as the truth of the universe. And then he concludes, this is his final thing. He says, by saying that timeless awareness and spaciousness is our ultimate goal, and that gratitude is everyone's salvation.
Oh, that's awesome.
To live our life to reach that goal is not to try to control it, but to experience the events of our life by being fully aware and free to choose where to direct our attention. Our choices will affect our own perceptions, but also the experiences of others.
Do you need a hug? No, but in all honesty, everyone listening, I hope that these words resonate. I hope what we speak of, and Jason toning me down into more layman's terms and the metaphors we use, bring about this connectedness. And I hope that you all have enjoyed the stories we are sharing with you and the information in our own journeys, so that we can all begin to learn,
right,
to elevate ourselves, to feel that oneness, and to move through the density that we are currently in to vibrate to a higher level. And that's what we're here for.
And that love and gratitude, he said, is our salvation. So we've been searching for something to save us, when it's actually in ourselves.
Yeah.
And that experiencing and being able to get rid of all the reality that we see, that we believe is truth, but to be able to have that, and I don't want to use the word external, but to be able to tap into that universal language.
Pierce through that veil. We're going to move through that veil, that illusion.
Mm-hmm. And that gratitude, like he says, is everyone's salvation. And I love that because I know what my day looks like when and it's just a cliche thing, but an attitude of gratitude or whatever you want to call it. But I know when I'm feeling grateful to someone, like feeling grateful right now for doing this podcast, because I know if we can change one person, like you said, we've took that
thought form, right?
Yeah, we've took that thought form and we've turned it through words, through this book, through Russell Targ, through you. We've took this and we've amplified it out and we've put it to where it needs to be. But more importantly to that, to me, Alex, I think it's us living life to where we know that it's truth. And I know for me, I'm 46 years old. I know for me, when I see that my life has been, and I don't want to use the word a lie, but I've gotten so caught up in the perceptions of everything that doesn't really mean that much.
Yeah.
And then when I read this book and I began to see that there's something that's more than, and then how can I tap into that so that I can assist and help others and create that experience in others? To me, that's what we're doing right now. And that's what this podcast is all about.
All we got to do is change one mind, right?
Yep, exactly.
Give me a high five. That was unreal.
Yeah, that was good.
That's what I'm talking about.
Perfect. So we'll be back. We're going to have another one.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into another deep topic.
Yeah, we'll let you guys know. We'll elevate it. Keep an eye out on the social media.
Yeah, on the social media. But we want you guys, if you have a question, whether it's relationships, maybe it's more practical, changing perspective on things, whatever it may be, we want you guys to DM us. We want you guys to email us. We want you guys, it'll be at higherdensityliving.com. We're getting that up as quickly as we can.
Right.
We've been working on that. And we'll have all the contact information in there. We would love to hear from you.
And we'll show you how it all comes back to that one theme.
Yes.
And what is that theme? All is one.
All is one, yep. And that's going to be the theme of the podcast, All is one.
Unreal.
Yeah, I am.
I am. No, I am too.
Yeah, I am.
No, I am.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, everybody.
Look within. Look within. Look within. And live your life on the edge of two worlds. A reality where you find true understanding of who you are. The learning is done. Become the teacher in embodying the oneness of all. Walk the cliff's edge between the seen and the unseen realities. Become a higher density being. Please go to www.higherdensityliving.com.